All right, so this is what I believe is the 16th episode of Coffee and Games. I don't know if you guys know, but I now have a segment called Rum and Complaints too. So when I become a Grizzly veteran, I can start adding things to that instead of talking about how much I love the game, because apparently people... Yeah, right?
Oh,
so
dear.
Essentially, for anyone who doesn't know, my very first two podcasts were with Muck and Teapot. And I asked them a lot of things as a new player. And so I've been through a little bit now, but there were a lot of questions that I actually didn't ask. And there are still some new things that I don't exactly know. And so I'll be asking you guys today. So Muck, if you want to start letting, I'm sure everyone knows where you are, but if you want to let everyone know where they can find you, and then Teapot, if you can follow.
I am Mukluk Douglas Bartholomew Reginald Esquire IV. I am live every single night on Twitch at twitch.tv/Mukluk. We recently celebrated 3 years, live every day for 3 years. And main YouTube channel is Mukluk YouTube. Don't go to the one just called Mukluk. They make shoes. And if you're interested in my stuff, that's where you can find it.
And Teapot.
I'm Teapot. You can find me at twitch.tv/MightyTeapot. Same thing on Twitter, same thing on YouTube. Watch all the videos, watch my stream. It's pretty good.
I love how I'm the only person that has names that are different for my socials and my YouTube and Twitch. And I believe, Muck, it was you last night. I was hanging out in your stream and you were like, yeah, all of my stuff is the same, because why would I have a Twitter like Joe and a YouTube like Samuel?
And
I'm sitting here going,
getting mad at me. I was like, hey, Billy Bob, great job with alacrity. You did good. And he's like, dude, I've grouped with you like 20 times. I'm like, you have? He's like, yeah, you're treating me like a noob. I'm Chandra and Billy and Sam and Joe. And I'm like, well, excuse me with my thousands of viewers for not remembering your 4 characters with completely different names and genders. I went off on him. I was like, why would you do that? I was like, make your names the same. You're making me mad.
This is what happens, and this is why you need to get out of here, Xandrii, because like Muck has already become toxic. He's been playing Guild Wars 2 for not even that long hardcore, and now he's already toxic. Look at this.
Wait till I get on Reddit. That'll be my final form.
Painful display. Goodness me.
We actually talked about that on the first podcast that I was actually on was with Guild, and he was like, oh, this is so great. We haven't had this for a podcast before. And I made a joke, and I was like, what, a girl? And he goes, no, like someone who's actually like 100% positive about the game. And I was like, oh.
There goes the positivity.
And it was actually funny, too, that, so we were talking, obviously, before the podcast about everyone waking up. Which I actually think is really funny. So when I did the first podcast with you, Teapot, a bunch of people were really excited that you had toned down your how enthusiastic you are and how fast you talk for me. And it was funny because I've actually hung out in your streams recently. Not recently, I always have, but actually started talking recently. And one of the comments that I also always get on my YouTube is, you talk too much and too fast. And I'm watching you cast last night or like teach people these fights for the first day of community night. And I'm going, and people were saying something about how fast I talk. You sound like an auctioneer, but it's cool because you can actually get every single word. Like, you're not sure that you got every single word, but like you actually get every single word.
He throws bonus words in just to make absolutely sure. Like, you just sprinkle some more on top.
The Guild Wars 2 is a crazy place. Sometimes you have to do challenge mode fractals with a necromancer, minion monster in green gear. These things happen, and you need a lot of words to counter that.
And speaking about it being the first for community night, can you tell us exactly what's going on with Community Month with Hard Stuck? Are we allowed to discuss that topic?
Well, I like pain. So I'm going to stream basically every day of June. I'm going to do 12 hours every single day, 6 hours on EU, and then 6 hours on NA. And I'm going to try and convince players to do something that, it's a rare thing in Guild Wars 2. I'm going to convince them to actually try and play with each other instead of being AFK and just like looking at the wall in Divinity's Reach the entire time. That is the goal.
It is a very nice wall, though.
And, hey, I've actually seen it. When I was 100%ing Divinity's Reach the first time, people were like, and this is the area near the bankers. This is where everyone just hangs out in their best fashion. And I was like, oh, haha. And they're like, no,
No, it's serious.
That's not a joke.
It's not a joke at all. Yeah, I mean, like that. I mean, that is it's a weird thing. I mean, it's not necessary. It's not even really that bad. But yeah, like it's actually AFKing. AFKing is like an art in Guild Wars 2. You've got to get it right. You've got to find the right spot. You've got to have the right fashion to flex on people, right? And then boom, there you go. That's like a core component of Guild Wars 2 endgame.
That's fantastic.
WoW had that too. Like you get a mount that nobody else had yet. It's like time to go AFK at the bank for 4 hours. I got to show this thing off.
Especially in org. I remember first starting to play and I was like, oh man, because this was like back before I cared about story or lore or any of that. I just wanted to play with my friends back in high school. And everyone's like, oh, you have to race to max. You have to race to max. We need a healer. So the first thing I actually leveled up was a priest. And so I get to max level, right? And I'm like, oh, when are we doing the raids? No, we AFK in org. That is what endgame is. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe this isn't the game for me. But
the true content
website as well. So what is going on with that? I heard snippets that you were seeing if someone thought it was okay for you to start mentioning things. So I was wondering if we could start mentioning things.
Oh, I apologize. Was that to me or to him? You're talking about website. I thought we were still talking about Hardstuck. I missed that.
No.
I missed an important key word in that sentence. Okay.
We've moved on. Already.
Yeah.
All right. Old news.
Old news. Yeah. I actually worried that people were going to think I was just copying you because I didn't realize about your website. But a couple of weeks ago, I was talking with people, and it's been suggested to me a few times over the last year that I make a website. But for the longest time, I was like, I don't know what I would do with a website that would be beneficial for the amount of work that would entail. And then at this point, the playlist on YouTube of my Guild Wars 2 guides, it's like nearing 100 videos. And it is kind of a slog to find. If you don't type in exactly what you're looking for, you might not come across it just because it's so much. And so I was telling, I came across another content creator for Elder Scrolls Online named Alicast HQ. Don't know if either of you are familiar with him. He's got a website. It's kind of like a wiki, but it's just stuff he's made. So it's like, which is, very similar to what I understand is your idea with the Hardstuck site. You can go there, you could search for raid boss guides, build guides that he's made, but, going there that it's all his stuff. But additionally, it's got links to, all of his, his Twitter, his Twitch, his Discord, things like that. It's just, it brings all his different socials together in one place. And I was like, okay, that actually sounds beneficial. And so I started talking with people in the community, and they were really, like 50 nerds started jumping up and down. Oh, let me do the front end. Let me do a picture. And I was like, let me do this. Let me do that. And I'm like, all right. And I made a Discord channel, and it's just like they're swarming in there. And so we're working on a website right now. And of course, I'm vetoing things or approving things as it's going, but the thing is taking shape really fast. But it's basically going to be a site, like you could go there and, like one of the things I'm most known for right now is the get to the point guides that explain like a boss fight in like 2 minutes. And you can go there and be like, all right, you're new to a raid. It's like, okay, raiding, wing 1, and then click on the boss, and then boom. And then I can just add notes under the video. Because the way it stands right now, if you're doing all your content on YouTube, is let's say they tweak something. Like let's say I'm like, don't bring engineers to this fight, they're useless. Well, engineers just got quickness, that there could be a way that they could be useful there. So I can just add a note under the video, like as of April, they might not be useless, and I don't have to remake entire videos just because I have a line like that. So it's something that's, I've been showing kind of the mock-ups on stream the last couple of nights, which I think is what Xandrii saw. But it is still in the early stages, but it's something I'm really excited about.
What I actually think is really neat with that is obviously it's all coincidence. And like you were saying, because you were like, oh, I didn't want it to seem like we were doing like the same thing as Teapot, right? Things like that. But my fiance and I had actually just started, it's not the same because it's not a wiki or guides that we'd made currently, but we just started a game studio. And so we're actually looking at doing like tabletop settings and having our own PC games, but we also wanted to have a stream team and an org. So we just created our own website too. And then everything, like Mello was talking to me about Hardstuck, and exactly what Teapot, you and Mello were going to start doing. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. And we actually just started doing that. So if you guys have any questions, I'd love to do that. And then Muck, you started talking about it. So I was like, oh, cool. If he has any questions, so it's just really neat that we all just kind of did it at the same time. And I wasn't sure if we could talk about the website that Hardstuck is doing, which is why I asked Muck about the website first.
Oh, but I'm just the door opener. I see how it is.
Yeah, he's
well, now that they've had the appetizer,
the main event. Time for the main event. Here we go. Yeah, no, of course, yeah. I mean, yeah, it should be done pretty soon. It's been in the works for a very long time. We've gone through a few different iterations of it, and on websites in general, I think they're great. I've wanted to do something like this for actually years. Okay, but things are difficult. Things take time, unfortunately. And what I really like about websites is just how forward-facing they are, how accessible they are. Because if you want to watch a stream, you actually have to be there when the stream is live and actually be there on time, right? Which I am not. But a YouTube video is a bit better than that, right? Because you can go watch a YouTube video anytime. But a website's even better than that because you can just go to the website and it's there all the time, and you can see the entire back catalog, and you can have a more kind of customized, tuned user experience on exactly what, and you can curate the content even more so than elsewhere, right? You can kind of go a little bit further with what you want to do with your content. So yeah, websites are really good. I think they're very, very important. And in a way, I don't think it's coincidence. Certainly with a lot of what me and Muck are doing, it's a natural conclusion of taking the game and the community a bit more seriously. For a long time, I just didn't. I kind of looked at the game as a really big hobby, essentially, and I didn't really care about the community. I'm not gonna lie. I was like, right, I'm doing my thing, right? If you like it, good. If you don't, then yeah, who cares, right? I did that for a very long time. I was kind of just memeing it up here on Twitch, just doing stuff, and I cared about the game and the community, but I didn't actively try and push it in the right direction, if that makes any sense, right? I misspoke that slightly. What I mean is that over the last kind of year or so, I've taken a much more active interest in changing the direction of the game and changing the direction of the community, as opposed to just kind of saying, that's what I think. Okay, if you agree, awesome. Now it's more right, if you don't agree with me, then get the hell out of here. Well, no, not quite like that, but you know what I mean, right? I'm looking to change hearts and minds right now. That's the big part of what I'm doing right now on stream, and what I'm going to be doing with the Hardstuck project and all the team on board with that there as well. And look, when I look at this stuff, with everyone coming up, with Muck's website and Town Song as well, I love this stuff. I view all this stuff as an absolute win, right? When I see someone else doing well, that's awesome. I want more people to be doing well. I want as many people as possible to be doing well in the game, because what the game lacks is just this stuff. You look at guides, they don't exist, right? There are, even now there are no good guides for most of the raid bosses for Guild Wars 2. It doesn't exist. The idea of that being the case in WoW or Final Fantasy is absurd, right? You can look at these things and you've got 10 different versions, right, for all the different difficulties, right, in these video games. And it literally does not exist in Guild Wars 2. Not even one that I would consider good for a lot of the bosses. Muck's been doing a lot of this stuff for a lot of the. He's working his way through all the way on. He's on wings 1 through 4 now, I believe. Right? Okay, but that still leaves 5 through 7. Right? Yep. It's not done. Right? And it's not. And then we've got to talk about challenge modes too. Right? Then you can talk about challenge mode raids and challenge mode fractals. And these resources simply do not exist. Right? In a format that's going to be accessible and will actually help people.
And it's actually funny that you mentioned that, especially with the community aspect, because I guess the first hot take of the day. So when I was streaming Final Fantasy XIV, it would be one of those things where I was like, I have to be up at this time. I have to stream at this time. I have to end at this time. And it wasn't because, I'd started going full time, and it wasn't because it was a schedule that I wanted to keep with a certain viewership I wanted to keep. It was because I wanted to be on before this person. I wanted to make sure that because I knew that I had the same viewers as someone else. And so it's just funny that now but I didn't know them, right? And so with Guild Wars 2, it's just kind of been a different approach, I've actually done the podcast, and I hang out in people's communities, and I hang out in everyone else's stream. And so literally, I was streaming yesterday. I only got a couple of hours in because I wanted to get a YouTube video out. But I knew that, Muck, you were doing your EU stream for the earlier portion of the day. And started the first 12-hour for your community month, and I'm sitting here going, why are you guys watching me explore like this blight area? Like, why are you guys watching me do this? Oh, because I might do Tequaddle? Like, go watch these guys. Like, it's so cool. And it's kind of neat, like, not worrying about what time I'm going to get on and actually knowing, like, not that I know you guys personally, but actually knowing other people and being like, I love their content and I would totally, you know, like, talk you guys up, not that you need talking up, but to everyone and be like, guys, go watch this. Muck is doing this. Go watch Teapot. Teapot's doing this. Go watch like Sin or SimSouls or Angie. Like they're doing these things. So it's just kind of, it's cool. So first hot take didn't feel the same way, I guess, when I was streaming Final Fantasy 14, but it could have been because I didn't know the people in Final Fantasy 14 either.
Super short story on that point you just made. I've been there. One of the biggest game, and it's not big, but the biggest game I streamed before Guild Wars 2 was Grim Dawn. It's an action RPG, same type of game like Diablo. But Grim Dawn has a wiki. And if you go into the wiki, they automatically will embed the Twitch streamer in the Grim Dawn category that has the most viewers at the top of the page. And of course, anyone on the wiki just counts as a viewer, or at that time they did, for your stream. So I was, in there with like, 5 to 20 viewers, 6-piece chicken McNobody. But if I got on before this other guy, I would get embedded on the wiki, and then I would suddenly have 80 viewers. And it was just like a snowball rolling down a hill at that point. So like every night, I was like, all right, honey, it's 6:55. I gotta go beat this other guy I don't know, and I gotta start the stream. I gotta get on before him, or he's gonna get the wiki. And it was an actual thing that I very much thought about for a few months because just being near the top of the page helps with growth a lot.
Right.
That's kind of one of the brutal realities of Twitch, to be honest. Like Twitch discoverability is pretty spicy, right? With the way you can do things.
You're looking for.
Yeah, it's honestly pretty brutal. Like there's a huge amount of randomness if you're able to succeed or not. To be honest, like there's a lot of people who are very very talented who will be at 0 viewers forever, just because that's just the way the system works. Like I don't know. There's not much to say about that, right? You got to roll the dice. You got to roll the dice and network, right? You got to play the game. If you're gonna do Twitch, you got to play the game, right? If there's a top streamer out there, okay, here's a tip for all you aspiring streamers, okay? Like, if you guys want to get somewhere on Twitch, right, just go to like a streamer that's got a few hundred viewers and just like talk in their chat a lot, right, and just like become part of that community, and then say, hey, by the way, I'm fancy bumping into you. I happen to be live right now, okay? Like there you go. Like you gotta get that smooth networking in there. And I'm obviously I'm joking a bit there, but to a certain extent, it's like it is true. Exactly true, right? Like if you don't do this, like you're just rolling the dice. And to be honest, like if you don't mind doing that, right? If you're just gonna be chill about it, but if you want to like really really grow, you probably don't want to roll the dice as much, right? You want to take active steps that you can make to actually succeed.
There are some very big streamers out there that began as just, oh hey, it's that guy that mods for that other famous person.
Exactly.
Like that's exactly true.
And just going off of that, since we talked about it before the podcast, and I was wondering if it was okay, would you guys mind telling me how you started doing this full time? Like how you became full-time content creators? Either one of you can go first if you feel comfortable, but not at the same time.
Not at the same time. I thought we were just going to go at the same time. I thought we could just
whoever's louder wins.
It's kind of funny. Like on mine with this, like again, this sounds actually kind of insane, and for those who I guess like pay attention to what I do in the Guild Wars 2 community, people might view this as insane, but I didn't take it super seriously until very recently. Like, it was kind of like when the expansion started coming out, the news about the expansion started coming out, and I started thinking, okay, right, I want to start actually being very very effective within the game. That's when I started taking it a lot more seriously and putting more hours in. Before this, it was like, oh yeah, it's a hobby and it means I don't have to do as much work. Nice, amazing, we love to see it. But now, yeah, it is turning into something a lot more serious to me. Like now, now I really am grinding. Okay, now I am fully activated here on Guild Wars 2. But it's actually like very very recent development for me. It wasn't something I was really looking at as a career as such until very recently. Before it was just like I like playing my video game and I like talking with the chat. It makes the game more fun, and I can complain about the game. Excellent. Perfect. My own personal pedestal to talk shit about Guild Wars 2. Oh, yes.
That's awesome. And Muck?
I've been streaming about three years now, and the first 2 years of it, it was very much a hobby. We would call it, in my household, we called it a full-time hobby, because I was, doing it every night. I was addicted, honestly. That's the cold truth. Some nights it'd be 2 hours, sometimes it'd be 3 hours. But of course, as it grows and, you get some supplemental income, you get, subs here, bits there, things like that. So, it helps a little bit with it's kind of cool having a hobby that helps a little bit with paying the bills. And I would say doing it full time was the idea of it was like a dream job, but I never thought it'd actually happen. And then, it grew and it grew. And then 2 years into it, my normie job was a tech support. And the department I was in got closed down. So I got let go. Not my fault, but I got let go. And so I was like, all right, the pandemic just started. I can either go out and try to find a new job in this, or I could try to take this other thing, which was, content creation, and it's already kind of half paying the bills. I could try to just go hard and see if I could, grow it to the point where, we could get there. And, we, had a very long talk in the household about that. And then we decided to give it a try. And if it didn't work within a couple of months, I was going to, start looking for a new normie job. And I feel fortunate. It worked out. And it's been about a year now.
That's actually, you're not the first person that said that. So I don't know if you guys know some Final Fantasy XIV streamers, but one of my favorites has always been Llama Todd. And I actually did a lot of raiding with him for Savage content back in the day. Back in the day was like 2 years ago, but back in the day. And I had him on the podcast because I was really excited he wasn't really into YouTube. And so I was like, I want to have you on because this would be really cool for you to get. Not that I can give you much exposure for YouTube, but, people could be introduced to you and things like that. And so if you want to start doing guides and things, because there's like a lot of drama happening with the Balanced Discord. I don't know if you guys know about that, but and I was like, how did you get started? Like, because he went from streaming around the same time that I would stream. So it'd be like, I used to be EST because I used to live in New York. And it was like 7 p.m. EST to like midnight at the latest, whenever we could after work. And then he swapped to doing overnight. And I was like, wait, weren't you just on previously? Like, what happened? And he was saying that he was laid off because of things that had happened with COVID. And quite the same. And that things just ended up working out for him too. And it was, I don't know, it was like the first time I'd heard that because I actually, for me to start full-time content creation, I hated where I worked. And I worked there for 10 years and I was in an office full of 7 other abrasive women and that weren't nice. Like, I do not say that lightly. Like, they were not nice and, had like so when COVID hit for me, it wasn't like it was the opposite of a lot of things that was happening for everyone else.
Freedom.
Yeah. And so when COVID hit, it was like other people were, getting laid off for like the essential worker thing or whatever, and people had to like save money and budget for businesses. And for my dealership, it was, well, yeah, we have other people that are non-essential workers, but all of you women that are in the office right here, you guys are so essential that we're not going to pay you more. We're just going to make you work longer hours. So I was working like almost 70 hours a week for like 2 months, right when like everything started locking down for COVID. And I was streaming as a hobby too, and I just thought it was a lot of fun. And I finally just one day, I met Chalk, and he visited me like right before everything had happened with COVID, and he was like, "You should just not do that anymore. Like, how are you working 70 hours a week?" And I'm just like, okay, I just won't do it anymore. And so I didn't. I was just like, I'm done. It's cool. I have no idea how this is going to work. Like, if I move out, because I actually ended up moving out here to Wisconsin. And I was like, so, it's no big deal. Like, I'll just get a job out here. Everyone out here is super sweet. So if it happens, it happens, and I can't do it. But I think It was better listening to you talking about it, Buck, than the first time when I heard Todd talk about it. Because when he mentioned it, I thought I was going to cry. I literally teared up, but it worked out, right? And so you're the next person who said it. And
I'm lesser known for this, but I also have a series of guides on YouTube for content creators. Because if there's a thing besides Guild Wars 2 I can tell people advice about, it's getting into content creation, YouTube, Twitter, stuff like that. And I really try to drive home to people. People are like, "Oh yeah, you made it." And I was like, "Look, don't quit your job just because you think your mixtape's fire. Okay, just make sure you're covered before you dive into this. You do some preparation. Make sure you can pay your bills. Don't just count on money that might not be there, and then you're fine. You're fine. Just be smart about it." Because I get a lot of people. It's like there was one guy. It's the internet, so it might be alive. This one guy wrote me in, and he was like, "Yeah, my dad says like working on YouTube is just you playing games all day, and it's not real work. Help me convince my dad to let me." And I was like, "What the heck?"
I get it to a certain extent.
I was like, "I'm not, dude. I'm not." I was like, "Look, I'll give you advice. I'm not talking to your father."
Yeah, I get it to a certain extent why people feel that way. I think a lot of people like misinterpret it quite a bit because it's like, sure, yeah, we play games, we enjoy the games that we're putting out content for, but especially for certain things, there is so much that goes into it. I mean, like for example, Muck, I actually saw the checklist that you posted for was it a Twitter post that was like, what do you do when you get ready for stream? Yeah. And you had like a checklist of things, and someone was like, wait, you actually do all of that? Like make sure all, Windows system things are closed, double check that your program's
so, it's basically anything that's bit me in the butt one time when I tried to go live. My mic was muted. Oops. Stuff like that. Or I accidentally left Outlook open so it chimed in the middle of a stream, So I've got a checklist, and most of them are like 1 to 2 second long tasks. But yeah, I start the stream and I bing, 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 bing down the list and make sure it's done. And yeah, someone tweeted, they're like, when you guys have your starting soon screen, do you just sit there and read the chat, or are you actually doing anything? And I posted the checklist. I was like, I do this. And of course, it was a very impressive looking list, even though the whole thing takes like a minute and a half to do. And they're like, what? That's so professional. I look like a slop. I was like, dude, if you're just sitting there staring at chat, you should just start your freaking stream. Like, you're going to lose people.
My starting soon screen is more like I'm eating, I am crawling out of bed, right? I'm going, I'm running around in circles, flailing around wildly. a little bit less professional on my end. I'm already at that point like half an hour late. Like it's a different environment. Yeah, I just embrace it. Yeah, like they use it. Like they like it. Like the stream, they enjoy it at this point. They prefer it that way. Like if I appear on time, they're like, well, what the hell is this? Right, go away, come back later.
Mine's about 20 minutes. It's more along the lines of like I get everything ready, start stream, and then realize there were things I forgot to do. And then I'm just like, oh crap, and I'm scrambling to get all of those and then like post going lives for anyone who actually looks at them and things like that. But the reason that I actually asked you guys here today, now that I've gotten to know all of the things that I wanted to know about you that I didn't previously, was some things that I've seen in some Discords that I'm just curious as to if you guys feel the same way. So the biggest one that was actually ended up being a hot topic in my Discord was Teapot. You just put out your video on Fresh Air Weaver and whether or not it could still or if it was dead, or you use it as an example in one of your videos with a lot of the hot fixes that were happening. And so one of the big things in Discord was, when do you consider a build dead or to be dead?
In PvE? In raids?
In both, actually.
Guild Wars 2 is tuned to the point where such a thing is impossible. If you can't play a build, you're bad in Guild Wars 2.
That's what I thought.
And that's reality, by the way. That's not an opinion. That's not a hot take. That's reality. For example, recently I just did a Wing 1 Spirit Veil first raid released clear, and we did it on level 78 characters. Obviously, normally you're supposed to do the raid at level 80, and we did it without elite specializations, which are typically used in every single raid ever. And we actually did strategy. We did it faster than a lot of groups would do it normally, and we actually did a strategy that is kind of one of the very few soft DPS checks, right? On the second boss in that raid. Yeah, we did it. If you're like, my fresh air weaver only does 35k DPS. Oh no, what am I gonna do? Yeah, okay, get good, right? People are complaining about this, and now you can complain about it being undertuned, which by the way I would agree with. Compared to other things like Power Weaver kind of got a bit of a slap for no reason, not gonna lie, in that last match because they wanted to make Condi Weaver better. Like, okay, you know what? Let's make Condi Weaver better, but let's take the number from Power Weaver instead. But ultimately, it doesn't matter. There's a recent build right now actually that just kind of came out here that I've kind of been roasting a bit on the stream because I think the implementation of it isn't very good via reading it. But it's like Heel Scrapper. Like Heel Scrapper is a build that people have wanted.
I was wondering how many minutes we'd get into this before this game.
And like Heel Scrapper is not bad, right? It's not bad at all. You can play it if you want. I'm just not really a big fan of how it actually works. I think the way they added quickness to it, funny enough, like the way they added recently a boon to it. They wanted to make like Scrapper a little bit better in PvE, and they wanted to be more of like almost like an aggressive support. Like the way they added this extra boon, this extra effect to it, it was very clear that they wanted it to be right. You're going to play DPS and give quickness. It was like very obvious the way they wanted to do this because it requires you to use your utility skills, right, to do this. And that's all well and good if you're playing DPS because you're just doing your rotation, so it doesn't matter. And you might have your utilities will give you more DPS. Great. But the thing is, if you want to play heal, this means you have to use your defensive cooldowns to give this boon. So it's like, okay, hang on a minute. I need to use my cooldowns in order to do this. Then what if I need to use my defensive cooldowns? And I think that kind of implementation isn't very good. But even that build, complaining about that build aside, it's perfectly good. All supports are completely okay in Guild Wars Sim. And you can play heal warrior and it will still work, right? You can do almost anything, and you can do it. Yeah, a build is dead. Honestly, a build is dead if it does less than 15k DPS. Anything above 15k, you can clear pretty much everything. Just for some perspective, right? To do say the first boss of the boss that people do very often as their first boss is a boss called Veil Guardian. It's actually honestly a surprisingly tricky one. It's not the easiest boss in the game, but it's one that people
usually take people to
very early on.
I think Veil Guardian's tougher.
And to do that, everyone in the group needs to average something like 7,000 DPS, okay, to do that boss, to actually succeed. Man. Now, 7,000 DPS. Now, I know that might sound a lot because you haven't got to the end game yet, Xandrii, but you can get far more than that by auto attacking, right? Like the boss. You don't have to do anything else. You can auto attack on almost any build, and you'll get more than 7k.
I was going to make a joke that was white hits or something like that as a joke, just coming from WoW and 14. And thank you so much for saying this because I wanted to say something, but I was like, it's not my place because technically, I don't know exact numbers, but I'm sitting here going, play what you think is fun. Obviously, Muck, when we had originally talked, you were talking about different challenge modes and an amount of DPS that you can do for things. And so it's you could get it down with this, but wouldn't it be better if you could do it 3 minutes faster? That way that, there's less time for you to make a mistake. You know what I mean? So it would make more sense.
You're talking about a conversation I have. Okay, so because of the guides, I get a lot of people that are just brand spanking new to Guild Wars 2 in my chat. And a lot of people recoil at having to check their DPS. They think it's an elitist concept. They don't like that. And so I always have to kind of lead their mind into this concept with baby steps. And I'm like, look, if you can kill something with 5k DPS, that's totally fine. That's great. But if you were doing 10, then you have to survive half as long without making a mistake. If your group, it takes 7 minutes to kill something instead of 9, that's 2 less minutes for something to go wrong. Just think about it that way and put a little more effort into this.
That was actually the next thing that I was going to touch on, was the DPS meters, third-party programs, and things like that. So, hey, I'm the host here. Why are you bringing those things? Just kidding. But for Final Fantasy XIV, it's kind of like a gray area where any third-party program that you could use, especially DPS meters, is kind of like, it's okay. Technically, it's against the terms of service, especially if you use a certain plugin called Cactbot. What Cactbot does is it's kind of like deadly boss mods or like stuff like Taco. Like it calls out the fight for you, essentially. Or it like certain things will glow if there isn't supposed to be a tell there from the boss, like things like that. If it's not actually like on the ground for the AoEs and things like that. And so the big thing with that is pretty much as long as you don't tell someone that they're not pulling enough DPS or berate them, I guess. I've heard of people getting banned for less, but like berate them for their DPS, it's okay to have the meter. But they will go after Twitch streamers if they have their DPS meter up, even if they don't mention it in a group. Now with World of Warcraft, which is the only other MMO that I've played currently, planning on playing some others, it's like add-on heaven. Like, let's have add-ons for everything that makes the game prettier. Let's have add-ons to make the map prettier, which was a sexy map, actually, I believe was what it was called. And then there's like 3 different DPS, you know, there's like SCADA, Recount, and then instead of just deadly boss mods to call out fights, it's DBM, it's big wigs, and there's tons of stuff. And so I know about Taco for Guild Wars 2. But is it like is it a TOS thing? Do they kind of encourage it?
They're okay with it. And I can really emphasize this because some people will be like, is this allowed? And I literally, this morning, I was answering YouTube comments about an add-on. As people will say, like, is this allowed? And I'm like, yes. And they're like, are you sure? And I'm like, okay, look. And the argument I usually use with this is Tekit's Workshop. Tekit is another content creator. He is an ArenaNet partner. And literally 100% of his content is guides for using Taco. They know it exists. They're okay with it. The rare time that something is added into an add-on that they're not okay with, they step up. An example of that is when they added equipment templates to the game. Leading up to that, Arc, leading up to that, Arc, which is the DPS add-on that we were, for Guild Wars 2, Arc had an option. And it was kind of fickle. It wasn't perfect, but it was basically, you know, click one button and you could swap gear sets. So you would like click a button and, you know, you could swap from your tanking gear to your healing gear as long as it was in your bag, things like that. Now, when equipment templates came out, of course, they wanted to monetize it. And I'm not going to talk about my thoughts on that. I'm just going to say that is what happened.
Did they really?
Yeah. So when that happened, they contacted the guy who made Arc and they said, take this feature out of the add-on if you want to keep using it. And he said, okay. So he took it out, and now we still have a damage meter, but it no longer has that functionality because equipment templates are part of the in-game thing. So that's, since I became a content creator, that's the only example I know of where they actually asked an add-on maker, stop with this feature because that's ours. So if they have a problem with Taco, I'm pretty confident that they will make noise about it.
They would say something. That's unfortunate, but the business practice for that, like just purely on the business end for monetizing that is like, it's so smart, but it just comes off as like a little abrasive. At least to me it does. But
the feature wasn't implemented exactly the same. As a small example, with Arc, all that other gear for the other sets would be in your bags, taking up space. With equipment templates, anything in any template doesn't go in your bag. So, you know, we did end up with a lot of extra bag space freed up. But that is what happened. But yeah.
I'm sorry, Teapot. You said
the only reason they even did it that way is because they wanted to monetize it. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, we shouldn't get into this because it will take all day, to be honest. But you know, like the build template thing is one of the very few times where I've been disappointed in ArenaNet from a monetization standpoint. Like, ArenaNet has always been a very consumer-friendly company. Like, despite even going with a microtransaction model, it's still consumer-friendly. It's a very consumer-friendly business model. Build templates are one of 2 instances where I've thought, wow, that is actually very greedy. The first was mount loot boxes at the start of Path of Fire, which they then actually subsequently removed. Essentially, they removed them because they got roasted very hard, actually, by everyone, including Jim Sterling. That was the other time there as well. Like the implement, it's kind of one of those things that it's like so close but so far, because the implementation is good, right? It's actually a very good implementation. It's very convenient, very useful. But the thing is, it's limited in how much you can use it, so it doesn't quite work right. It's kind of worse than Arc templates, particularly if you play more than one game mode on one character. And also, it is going to cost you quite a lot if you play a lot of different builds. Not good at all, unfortunately. Like on Taco and Arc DPS, right? Those are the meters you can use. They're actually explicitly allowed by ArenaNet, and ArenaNet actually work with Delta Connected, who's a developer of Arc, to make sure that it is TOS compliant, right? Like, well, no, I mean, it isn't TOS compliant, right? Like both. I mean, Taco okay, this is actually something I have a bit of a gripe with the terms of service here. Like, if you actually read the terms of service, it says you're not allowed to have anything that gives you an advantage over other players, like allows you to play more accurately and more effectively than other players. Taco, I will say this now. Taco absolutely violates that, and so does Arc DPS, right? Like, it absolutely violates that.
I'm not a fan of it, but I try not to hate on it too much.
Yeah, I think, look, the way I see it, it's ANET's game, ANET's rules. Yeah, I don't really like Taco. I don't really like stuff like that. I want to play my video game. I don't want to play a UI, right? I want to play a game. But it's allowed. That's how it is. Same thing as
during Super Adventure Box Tribulation mode,
right?
Then you're okay with
it.
No, the thing is, okay, right. I don't know if you know the context behind that, but okay. So the reason I used Super Adventure Box did it for Super Adventure Tribulation mode is because I have one of my mods, right? He's a very big Taco enthusiast, okay, and he was a little sad, and I was like, right, I'm gonna cheer Mike up. I'm gonna do a full Taco Tribulation mode run with Taco enabled, and he experienced joy at watching me do it, right, and watching me see all the different paths and then still die anyway. So but yeah, that's when the good memes come in. Yeah, it's some fun stuff.
That was a very well prepared excuse. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, it's don't understand when it's the truth. Boom.
But the way that it actually is mentioned in the TOS is kind of the same thing as it was for Final Fantasy XIV. And I feel like, especially with the expansion coming up, that this is a good thing to talk about. And it might be why, Muck, that you get this a lot on YouTube as well for these questions, or even in your stream, asking if it is okay to use and asking if you should know about DPS, because it's really, really frowned upon in that game, but not so for other games. And so I feel like it's a really good topic to touch on. And the whole thing with that is that a lot of these add-ons that you can use that would be kind of, breaking the immersion of the game or giving you an upper hand in the game are against the TOS, because obviously it came out, the game was meant for console first. And so you could play it on a PS3, and then they moved it to PS4, and they're now moving it to PS5. I think they actually finally just had the actual compatibility. And you can't get those add-ons on your consoles, which is why it's such a big thing. So I get it to an extent, but I think it's a really good thing to talk about here too, just so that people actually know. Because I keep saying all the time, especially on Twitter, I'd seen Teapot's, I'd seen your tweets for it too, like, Guild Wars 2 2021 is Guild Wars 2's year. Like, let's get people, over here and hyped up, and especially with like Exoduses from WoW currently. And there have been new patches for 14, but obviously the expansion isn't until the fall. And so it would be a really, really, really good time, especially when things come out for the patch and for the announcements. Not the patch, but for the announcements in, I believe it's July 27th that we're getting more information on End of Dragons, or just where the game is headed in general, I think.
That's right.
Is that when the sneak peeks of the Elite specs was coming out?
The leaks, except they're not leaks. That's right. Yeah, that's another thing entirely. But yeah, I'm expecting some pretty big stuff. Okay, ArenaNet haven't always done the best job promoting their video game. Okay, let's see if they can do a better job this time. Can they promote the video game? I am ready. Let's go.
I'm really looking forward to July because the Legendary Armory too.
Oh yeah, I've nearly got full legendary ready to go. Oh, very nice. I can delete all my ascended gear. Oh, very nice. I mean, on the whole, like, Guild Wars 2 thing. I mean, look, historically, Guild Wars 2 has had a rough time, right? Like this is a game that has had a tough time existing in the industry. Like Arena has not had the easiest development cycle. It's been fraught with perils, with terrors, and with a lot of setbacks, right? There's been content droughts. There have been, layoffs, right? There's been 10 different game directors. Not that's an exaggeration, but a lot of different game directors have been in, out. Everyone's going all over the place, right? The engine is from like 2003 and barely works anymore. It's held together with twigs, and this is actually, in my opinion, one of the very few times that where Guild Wars 2 is actually on like a massive upswing, right? And I think everyone's feeling pretty positive about it. I think there's like a very good reason to be feeling very positive about the game right now. I would say that the kind of like the golden age, right, of Guild Wars 2 was probably in the Heart of Thorns era. And then from then it was, things got a little bit not so good, and things started to go not so well. Like the content kind of was like a little bit questionable. Like Path of Fire kind of destroyed a lot of things. Elite specializations, power creep, very good. But now, I think ArenaNet's really changing their design philosophy. Right, there's a lot of things that some players might not even necessarily remember. Like how you would just get complete radio silence. You would get zero communication about what was going on. You'd have to wait an incredibly long time between any kind of balance patch, right? You would get like one type of content and nothing else, right? So you might get, for example, like this is something that we were talking about, like raids and community animosity. This is like a really hot topic, and I think a lot of this actually stems from the very origin of raids, right? Because when raids came out, we essentially got nothing but raids for a long period of time, right? And this was obviously a lot of the players who were playing the story were not happy about this, because this isn't a game like WoW or Final Fantasy. If you can't do that raid, you can't do that raid. Like the game will never let you do it. There's no gear you can get that will make you more powerful to eventually outgear the raid. There's no story mode to play. If you are not good enough to do Veil Guardian, you will never beat Veil Guardian, ever. Right? It will never happen. Until they shut the servers down, right? Or just like give you GM powers. It won't happen. And this was actually the subreddit was like a battlefield, right? Everyone was like going crazy, going at it, flaming each other. Right? Everyone's like, "Oh yeah, you're a bunch of noobs." Like, "Oh, you're a bunch of idiots." And I was like, "Oh, this is trash." Like, "Oh, ArenaNet, they've abandoned the casual players. They're only making hardcore content now." And that kind of like really kicked this off. The entire thing, and again, like you didn't even have a DPS meter back then, not an official one anyway. So then you had people like kicking each other for no reason. It was on. I mean, that was like, Guild Wars 2 is known as like the friendliest game out there, friendliest MMO, TM, all that kind of stuff. But it's it's more like the community very rarely actually interacts with itself, right? Like this is kind of the thing about Guild Wars 2, is that it's not that everyone's friendly, it's just that you never interact. So you can't, ArenaNet solved it. How can you have a bad experience if you don't have any experience, right? Like a lot of the ways that you encounter players in Guild Wars 2, it's like impossible to be toxic. Like it actually cannot happen because other players are kind of irrelevant to you, right? In the open world, like if there's someone doing like 2k DPS, it's irrelevant because the event's going to succeed anyway. Like there's no way it's going to fail. And it's in raids, that's obviously not the case. If you've got someone who's not pulling their weight, then that can be pretty bad. That can be a very negative, impactful experience. But this is the kind of thing with Guild Wars 2 there as well, to an extent, there with this kind of animosity. Like it started a very long time ago, and a lot of it was actually in a way due to Arena having a tough time developing their game. But with Ender Dragons, Steam release is probably gonna be massive as well, to be honest. Arena is certainly much more focused on the game. During a lot of the previous kind of few years, they've been working on other projects, trying to make different IPs, right, which didn't really work out, right? They got a little bit of the chop from the Korean overlords over at NCSoft. And yeah, now we are where we are. And weirdly enough, like, of course, yeah. Like, I mean, they rule over us with with their benevolence, right? It's good stuff. But yeah, I mean, they are a formidable force out there, in the NCSoft, okay, the overlords of Guild Wars 2. And it's funny, like from a certain degree of tragedy for the company and some real like heart-wrenching stuff that was going on there with a lot of people unfortunately out of work, has in a way certainly from the player's perspective, this could be a really, really good year from a player and a consumer perspective for Guild Wars 2. I think the future is actually bright. It's been a bit of a meme in my community that yes, 2018 guys, year of Guild Wars 2. All right, 2019, year of Guild Wars 2.
You know, I wasn't going to say it because I thought it would come across as bullying, but
right.
since I've met you, I've seen you tweeting that every year.
Yeah, like
it is bullying. No, I'm just kidding. It's actually funny that you brought up a lot of topics that I wanted to hit on. How much time do you guys have, honestly, this morning?
Until my kid says he's dying of hunger.
Okay, so one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I wanted to see if how you felt about this, because for me, and I have a couple of things that you mentioned that I did want to discuss. For me, coming from the 2 other games that I've played, it's felt like, and you're probably gonna laugh at this, Teapot, but the other MMOs that I've played ended up feeling like a solo experience, especially WoW and 14. Because you don't, have to find the area where you go into a dungeon anymore. You don't have to attune to anything. You just put your group together, you queue in. And especially for Final Fantasy XIV, you queue for PvP, you queue for dungeons, you queue for raids, and once you go out into the world, the only things that are really out into the world, the game is beautiful and the main story is amazing, but you only go to certain areas for this main story because it's a whole separate quest line. And you don't actually need to explore. There's really nothing that's given to you if you do explore. You don't have to do anything in the game with anybody else. Even if you don't even have to wait for somebody to show up, except for these things that are called hunts, which is kind of like a world boss. You do not have to do anything. And I think that for games like this, it creates a mindset where when you actually get into group content, a lot of people think, well, I don't want to play the game that I don't want to play the way that you want me to play. This mechanic, I don't need to do it this way. And they get into a group setting and they don't mesh well with everyone else. And I feel like, unfortunately, it's a lot of the game's design. And so when I started playing Guild Wars 2, even though I've heard people say that it's playing the game solo together, out in the world, I actually think that it's really amazing. Like the design for the quest for the hearts, having the world bosses the way that you have them, actually going and finding these little mini dungeons, that are just out in the world, or jump puzzles, and you can do those together with other people. And so it's actually felt like an MMO. It's actually felt like an open world, even if you have to instance into the next area. However, I have heard that people think that because there's so much incentive to do things out in the world, you're not necessarily doing things with each other or really helping each other out. You're stopping in to finish a heart for your own gain for map completion. It's not necessarily a multiplayer feel. It's just that there are a lot of people there in the map, which compared to 14 and WoW, it is right. I mean, you won't find a congregation of people out on the map. You'll find a congregation of people in the city now. I don't know if you've felt the same way, because for me, it's a serious, it's more of an MMO feel than I've felt in other games. So I was wondering if because I've heard like Wooden Potatoes take on it. So I was wondering what yours was.
I don't know if I've heard Wooden Potatoes take on it, because those are usually an hour too long. But I freely admit, I love his content. I have to skim. I'm too short of an attention span. I have to skim. But yeah, on to the topic. I've done a few videos about this somewhere in the dregs of my YouTube, and my theories on why that is, because I feel the same way as what you said, but as far as identifying like why it's like that. First would be the system where that if you join in on someone killing a monster, you both get a share of the loot. So, or if you're in like a big open world event, which in Guild Wars 2 is, of course, the orange circles on the map, everybody that participates will get their own copy of the stuff. I first saw that when I played Rift. If you guys remember that MMO. A lot of I tried it for a couple months. I liked it. They did some things that I thought were very right, and one was like the open world rifts. If you would join a group of people, you just run over there and start hacking at monsters. You all got a copy of the loot. So the way that is in Guild Wars 2 is like, let me compare that to like vanilla World of Warcraft. I don't know how it is now because I haven't played WoW in a few years. But in vanilla WoW, if you found a rare mob like a silver elite that dropped a mount or something like that, you know, you could hit it once so that it was aggroed on you, and it would go gray for everybody else. And even if they hit it, the guy who hit it first gets all the loot. And people would be like, you know, oh, selling, you come trade me, and I'll invite you, and then we'll kill it, and you loot it, you know. And people would do stuff like that. There was absolutely no benefit. Like if you came across a guy fighting a rare mob and he was almost dead, it would benefit you to let that guy die, let the mob reset, and then you kill it so you get the loot. That's what the system encouraged the behavior. In Guild Wars 2, you come across a rare mob and a player almost dead. You could join in, help that guy kill that mob, even if your motivation is greed. And you get a copy of the loot, and that guy's like, oh, thanks, and even if you just walk off silently, whatever. When you revive someone in Guild Wars 2, you get XP. Many players don't care about that. Some are just like, oh, hey, this is worth killing 10 mobs. I'll revive this guy, I guess. You know, it's like there's these little motivations in the game that make it to where even the people that are greedy are helping the community, whether they like it or not. Those were my theories on why it's like that.
Right. Which I liked, and I feel like I already know what Teapot is going to say. Or not all of it, but I think I've heard you talk about those incentives not necessarily being a good thing because you're technically not working together with people. So it's kind of like you're playing the game together, but solo.
Yeah, like I think this is very much a double-edged sword. I think Vanilla WoW is an amazing example of this. Actually, it's a really good thing to bring that up. Actually, because you're absolutely right. Is that it absolutely encourages griefing. Like let me just say this, guys. Okay, Vanilla WoW. I played Classic WoW when it re-released last time. It was amazing. Okay, like you the biggest PvP you have in that game is against your own faction, like 100%. Like, you know, like a big part of the game is actually griefing your own faction, and it's extremely funny. But the thing is it means the other end of that is that your friends are so important in that game, right? If you're in a guild, you are like ride or die, right? Okay, because if you lose that guild, you're gonna lose the capacity to do stuff, right? And having a guild enables you to do so much more. The utter extreme of this is EVE Online, of course, right? Where EVE Online, where if you die, your stuff, it's gone, right? Okay, you know, you trust the wrong guy to run your corporation, which is a guild in that game. That guy can take everything out of your bank and then yeet himself out of there, and he's gone, right? And all your money, it's disappeared, right? You know, you can have backups, and I think that actually makes the social interactions meaningful. Like the issue I have with Guild Wars 2 is that a lot of the social interactions, while positive, and I completely agree with Mark here, right? Like, you know, it does incentivize you to essentially do good behavior. It makes it trivial and it makes it pointless. And I think, in a way, this design is one of the reasons why Guild Wars 2's community, to an extent, doesn't exist to the extent that other MMOs have a community. And, you know, on your point, actually, about like open world feel, I completely agree. I think, you know what? Here we go. It's a hot take podcast. I think modern MMOs are terrible. I think they're really bad. I think they're not even MMOs, really. Not what I would consider MMOs, right? It's not. They're not bad. I want to be very clear here, guys. Right? If I played Final Fantasy, I would enjoy it. Okay, even though I'm not a weeaboo. Okay, I'm not. You know, I'm not a cat girl. Do I look like a cat girl to you guys? Right? You know, I would enjoy the game. I've got some friends who play it, and if I did the raids, I would have fun. If I played World of Warcraft, I would have fun, but I wouldn't really, you know, it's not going to give me that, you know, virtual reality, virtual world feel that something like an old school game actually gives me. Like, you know, the most immersed I felt in an MMO for a very long time has actually been WoW Classic, which is a game from 2005 where you just auto attack stuff to death, right? And recently, actually New World, which is an upcoming game, which I'm big fan. Really looking forward to playing that actually on release. I played a lot of the alpha there as well, and it is a bit, you know, it has a lot of very, very old school features. You know, it's a bit of a walking sim. There's open world PvP. If you get killed while doing a PvP quest in that game, your quests reset. Okay, your time, it's gone. Right? Okay, like that. You know, interacting with people is actually relevant in that game for that reason. I don't know, that's kind of cool. And funnily enough, that game actually kind of has the best of both worlds to an extent, where I think a lot of the player interactions are going to be very meaningful because of the territory control, open world PvP. But you also have loot sharing, so you're always going to be incentivized to save people to an extent, because there you're going to be competing with your own faction as well. But I think that the really important thing with MMOs is that you need to have the social interactions be as positive as possible, because there are a lot of there's a lot of very, very big toxicity enabled by some of the stuff too. I agree. And there's an amazing example in WoW Classic that I really want to bring up actually, because it's so good. It's so good, but it's so bad at the same time. But yeah, I think there are ways to do it in a way that you can make it positive and meaningful, right? And I think New World does a good job of this. But the example I just have to bring up is this thing called world buffs in World of Warcraft Classic, and it's some of the best content I've ever seen. So in WoW, when you kill a boss, you might loot the dragon's head, and the developers at the time thought, oh, wouldn't it be great if when you hand in the dragon head, everyone gets inspired and does loads of extra damage for a while. And well, it turns out that they did this, and in fact, if you want to do raid speedruns in the original vanilla WoW, you need to have 7 world buffs. You need to actually go around in the world and collect up these buffs. You have to pick a flower, right? Go and talk to some ogres, right? Be around when a dragon head is around there. Be inspired by various things, right? You just do a whole bunch of stuff, right
now.
Okay, yeah. And well, that sounds great. That sounds like a lot of fun, Teapot. Well, here's the thing, okay? If you die, you lose them, right? So. And obviously, there's open world PvP in that game. So guess what, right? The enemy faction, a really big component of what you do as the enemy faction is you want to try and catch people when they're moving towards the raid, or they're getting these buffs, and you want to kill them, right? So you could basically completely cockblock the enemy team from being up to play the game. This is a catastrophically toxic interaction, okay? And it is a terrible system,
or
right?
if it was awful, a priest and he would just drive by dispel you.
Dispel, oh, it's so good. It's so good.
They actually carried it a little bit less vanilla, where you could actually go and you could grab dragon heads and have them in org, and it would be just an experience boost. So not a full world buff. It was just another experience boost, like what food gave you. And it's you could go and an extra 5% experience. And it's actually funny. So I don't know if it was purposeful or inadvertently, but you brought up kind of my next topic, especially with people's hype for End of Dragons. So,
I'm on it. I'm on point. I'm on point.
You are. So one of the things I'd actually, a hot take just for the person that I actually watch, but I actually really enjoy Asmongold videos. And one of the things that a lot of people have been upset about is Ashes of Creation, whether or not Ashes of Creation will meet people's expectations. And I think
I actually
agree.
High bar for themselves. I'm keeping an eye on that game, but they have they've set a really high bar.
Right. And realistically, I don't think everything that they've promised would come out right on release, whenever that ends up being, especially because of the issue with finding devs or keeping devs or anything like that, especially falling behind because of the pandemic and things like that. But a lot of people started to play the pre-alphas and stuff, and they were saying that they weren't as excited about, for example, the combat. It was good. It was fine. It just wasn't as exciting as they thought it was going to be. And I feel like I actually agreed with what Asmongold said, was that people for Ashes put the game on this pedestal. So regardless of what they were claiming they were going to do, regardless of what they were claiming they were going to release or any of the extra features, and I feel like this was a little bit of a New World thing too, was people were just this is going to be the MMO that kills MMOs. This is going to be, the Ashes of Creation or New World year. This is going to be the next big MMO, rather than just having the game come out and enjoying it. Like you were saying, Teapot, if you played 14, you'd probably enjoy it. If you played WoW, you'd probably enjoy it. And my thing is, I don't want people to feel that way about End of Dragons. And I want the actual, everything that they start talking about.
Believe me, we don't have to worry about ANET over advertising End of Dragons.
But not even just with people being excited about like seeing Kanta or being excited about, the new elite specializations. And everybody is saying that like a lot of things for the game, especially with the way that patches have been released, because they're not on a schedule, that they're really excited about what they're going to get with End of Dragons. And, they took people off of Icebrood because they wanted to put them on End of Dragons. And so the story is going to be good and this is going to be good. And I just don't want, I guess, I don't know if you guys have ever kind of like come into contact with this where people overhype things and end up being disappointed way too quickly, even if something's good because of what they're expecting. For example, with Ashes of Creation and New World. So I don't know how you guys feel about the hype for End of Dragons right now. Do you think it's realistic? Because we don't know anything, which I think is honestly a good tactic. Like, we really don't know anything.
I'm of the opinion
there are going to be elite specs. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say, I think that the hype for End of Dragons, like, we don't have hordes of people that don't play Guild Wars 2, with eyes glued to the End of Dragons, forum updates, like there are with New World and Ashes of Creation. I think with End of Dragons, it's more, there's hordes of Guild Wars players that thought they were never getting another expansion, that are really hyped that they're getting another expansion. Like, Anos had some ups and downs. I think they did a really good job with the 2 expansions so far. There was some good points, there was some bad points, but I think we're all just excited that there's more.
Right.
We're thirsty. We want more.
Guild Wars 2 expansions are good. Very good. They add a lot of stuff. I mean, if you like mounts or don't like mounts, the mount implementation in this game is amazing. It's better than any other MMO. Elite specializations are essentially like adding 9 new classes to the game in another MMO. Like they radically change how it switches up, right? How you actually play your profession. It's very, very different. There's a lot of new open world content, and then they continue to ship content throughout the rest of the expansion. But I actually completely agree. Briefly on the I don't want, we always needed like a segment with this actually, but yeah, I actually think that really I list new culture of really open alphas and betas or like a lot of like public testing is actually really bad. I think it is quite disastrous. I think it sets the wrong expectation, positive and negative, in the bad way, right? For example, like New World, it changed hugely. With the way it was developed. It's massively different to the original idea. And, I actually thought the original idea was better. And this has happened to me, right? I go like, man, I will always feel this way as well. It's going to be really hard to break out of this. I will always think, damn, I wish they had never gone away from their original design direction. And I think this is what I think we'd feel about this about every game we've ever played. I can guarantee that almost every game started out with a much wider design scope and then shrank down, and that may end up happening with Ashes, as you pointed out right now. In my Ashes of Creation is a bit of an interesting thing because the game dev or the creative director Stephen Sharif, he just likes video games and he wants to make his own, and he has infinite money, so
funding the project.
Yeah, so like there's a bit more leeway with Ashes potentially, with kind of like just doing whatever the hell he wants, which is always fun. There as well. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a while. Like, people probably are a little bit overhyped. And I think the other thing, on the overhype thing, particularly with Guild Wars 2, is that I think people have a really, really bad take on this. Or rather, not like they have the wrong approach. I think a lot of players think that, End of Dragons is going to come out. I'm going to suddenly enjoy the game after hating it for 3 years. Yeah! Right? And it's like, no, that's not going to happen. Like, if you're frustrated with Guild Wars 2, the same things that frustrate you are still going to frustrate you after the expansion. Like, not in every way. And I think, Arena can definitely improve things and fix things and make the game better. But I think for like the really, really gnarled vets who are just like really, really salty, it's not going to change anything. And I think thinking that way is foolish, and it's just a very easy way to get disappointed. In my opinion, like the expansion and End of Dragons is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to start enjoying the game, but I think it takes 2 to tango. I think if you want to enjoy Guild Wars 2 or any game, not just Guild Wars 2, you have to appreciate it for what it is, not what it could be or what you want that game to be, right? You have to look at it and say, right, okay, this is what the game is. Can I enjoy that? How can I enjoy that? Do I want to enjoy that? Do I want to play this game? And you can't say, oh yeah, but this game was so much better like 2 years ago. Well, okay, yeah, maybe. Like maybe it was. Okay, but the thing is, that isn't what that game is now, and that's not the direction it's going. The game is evolving. Like every game evolves, every game changes, right? Like World of Warcraft retail is unrecognizable to World of Warcraft Vanilla, but even Burning Crusade. And it's not always necessary for the worst. A lot of people would say that original WoW was better, but Final Fantasy is a great example of a game that I think almost everyone would universally agree had a massive redemption arc. When it released the more recent expansions, right? That was like a huge deal to kind of like bring the game back up into a better state.
And it was the same dev group. It was actually very, very small. They brought in one other person to actually direct and put people in the correct direction. And essentially what happened was with 1.0, it was an absolute flop. And it was because of it was because of their CEO. It was because of Square. It wasn't because of the dev team. It wasn't because of anything else. He just wanted it out quicker, and everything was broken and everything was cluttered. The UI was bad. The combat was bad. Everything about it was bad, but it was all just let's push it out there.
Wasn't that when they did like a public apology and they like came out on stage and bowed? Like I don't follow Final Fantasy much, but I do remember seeing that.
Yeah, and so essentially what they did was, on top of patching the game to try to actually make it playable, they were creating 2.0 in the background with the same like a bare bones dev team, because they wouldn't give them any more people. And so like everybody was working ridiculous overtime to try to fix the game that they'd already put out for the people who were already paying for it, because they even had a subscription back then. You had to purchase the game, you had a subscription, and people were paying for what was essentially at the time crap. And they completely fixed the game and they completely enhanced it. And so yeah, you're absolutely right. There have been a lot of differences, and honestly, that team should really get like a pat on the back for everything they did and what they've continued to do. Speaking of that, have you guys gotten, or do you get from either people who normally play Guild Wars 2 and are just kind of like conspiracy theorists, or from new players who want to check out the game but immediately see End of Dragons like Endwalker and say, is it the last expansion? Do you guys get that a lot? And
a couple of times, not a ton.
Guild Wars 2 End of Development.
One thing I wanted to say before we shift topics too completely.
Yeah, sure.
Teapot, you were talking about like, they shouldn't have announced so much about New World while they were still drastically changing it. I was reminded of something that happened just in the last few years that was like, it really shocked everybody. Completely different genre. Apex Legends, when it launched. They just out of nowhere, like if they had announced ahead of time, hey, we're making another battle royale, and there was already like 37 on the market, and everyone would have been like, shut up. But all they did is just one day they were just like, here's
the video game,
and they just dropped it, and then a bunch of streamers tried it, and it would have never had that success if they had said ahead of time they were making a battle royale. Right. And then the second thing I thought about when you talk about games changing, I actually know a guy who bought Fortnite when it was like zombie survival game, but then they changed it to be a battle royale, and he was really pissed because he couldn't get his money back.
Yeah.
So I couldn't help but think of that poor guy
too. So on top of that, like they tried to bring like some of that back, and they did the whole revamp where it was down for like a full day, and then they tried to do the 14 thing where like it was all implemented into story, which was funny because the game didn't have any story. It was a battle royale.
Dude, you can play Thanos in that game. There's no story.
Yeah. But go ahead. I'm sorry, Teapot.
Yeah, it's just a super interesting thing. I think I don't regret playing the alpha of New World at all, because I really enjoyed it. I played a lot. I put a lot of hours into it actually, and then all my progress got reset. I have to do it again. I've done it like 3 times now actually. But yeah, I like the game, and to a certain extent, it's like, damn, I kind of wish I hadn't. Because now I will always know exactly like all the stages of the game's development, right? Yeah, what could have been, yeah. Because like what's happened with New World, for those who know, is that they've actually kind of Guild Wars 2-ified it. Like they've actually like made it like very, I think quite similar to how Guild Wars 2 plays out, funnily enough, which is kind of interesting, right? But like before, it was a pretty brutal experience. Like it was definitely like the kind of like EVE Online with swords, right? Like and wizards is what New World was. It was like a brutal open world PvP game. Where you could just like attack basically anyone anytime. You could steal their items, right? Yoink all their stuff, and just steal someone's settlement anytime you wanted, right? It was pretty brutal. I was like, dude, that sounds pretty cool. Okay, sounds like it's going to be incredibly broken, incredibly toxic, but you know what? Let's go. Also has open voice, so you can kind of see where that one's going. Like a very, 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 very intense game. But I can understand they basically like streamlined the game down a lot and made it a lot more normie friendly. Because is the average player going to enjoy that game? No, of course not, right? Like most people are gonna hate that, right? No, of course not. They're not gonna enjoy that. It's just way too punishing, way too savage,
That term
for most
drives me
players.
nuts.
So
Normie.
they have, normie. Well, I mean, I know
That drives me nuts. I don't know why, but it's just like, it's like it's like hearing thick. That drives me nuts too. I hate like thick, normie, or I had people like. It's just funny that like that is those are the things that like irritate me. But it's just like normie, and then I have like on my videos at the beginning. Usually, I call people nerds, and there have literally been people that have commented on my videos, and they're like, "If you want to like, stop calling us nerds." And I'm like, you are here watching me play a video game. You are a nerd. I'm sorry. Maybe you didn't know. I can call you papegas. That would be fine.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
Papega.
I've used
Like, what do you
metaphors
want me to
before, and I wasn't really ever thinking about it. And then people were like, "That really bothers me," and I was like, "Ah, crap." I'd have to change it.
Hey guys.
Timey. Okay, you guys would understand this one. Timey. I can never understand. I remember she's sick. I can never remember what it was. And there was one day on a stream, I was like, "Yeah, she's got a turbo cancer." And I said that.
And I'm sure it offended people.
that one did not go over well.
But it's not like the intent isn't to be, and that's what was here going, I am a nerd. Like the intent is not to offend you, and if you are offended,
I wasn't trying to offend it. I couldn't remember what the fatal illness she had was, so I just spat one out. That was apparently a bad idea.
all I know is that people say when I get excited, I sound like Timey. So I was really excited to. I'll be doing a podcast with Debbie Derryberry, the voice for Timey, in June, and I was so excited that she would say something, or at least even like get back to me. And people are like, "Oh my gosh, it's gonna be Timey and Timey," and I'm like, "Great, you."
She's made it, Teapot. She's hit the big time. She's interviewing the voice.
True. It's
you and I are just washed up.
Yeah, we're irrelevant, washed up,
chicken
old people now.
But I just like talking about,
it.
I don't know, like, and it's funny too, and I don't know if you guys have gotten this with things, or like even when you speak, like if you speak negatively about the game or positively about the game. But a lot of people have also said to me, which I think is funny, is they're like, you like the game too much. Like, you have too much praise for the game. Yeah, I've actually got that in YouTube comments, and I'm like, what? Because if I said enough bad things, I'm sure people would be upset about that too. And I'm not like just saying positive things like to pander. Like, I'm legitimately saying positive things because these are things that I think are cool. For example, I was actually thinking about doing a video on this. So yesterday,
I would just respond, thanks. Be sure to use my referral link.
Yeah, right?
Nice.
I was near the area where Tequatl spawns. Tequatl, tequila, whatever. And there's this like path of NPCs that walks around, and one of them, I believe, her name was Nora, and she's this little Asura, and she's from the Priory, which is actually what I took. And if you stop and talk to her, because I'm weird and I like to talk to all NPCs, like that's how I play, MMOs or RPGs even. I love to stop and talk to everyone. I like to read all of the books. I know Mux picked on me about that with being level 10 and looking at every single picture in a room. But it's just something that I actually really enjoy because I like to make connections. And so I stopped and I was talking to, or listening, rather, reading the dialogue for this Asura. And she literally said that they were there to see if every time Tequatl emerges, if he gets stronger or uses different abilities against the people that they had stationed there. And I thought that was so cool because other world bosses in other games, they just respawn, right? You go and kill them. There's really no reason for them to be there. There might have been like an ultimate story of why it's there to begin with, but there's no reason for it to keep respawning, right? And so I thought it was cool because it's, one of the dragon lieutenants, right, for Zaitan, who is like for the undead, right? It's the undead. So obviously he's going to keep respawning. And then the idea that they actually have people placed there to keep fighting him because they want to see if every time he emerges, he's stronger. I was like, that's so impressive. And so I made a point of it on stream, and people are like, you like this game too much. You're too into this game. And I'm like, it gives reason for it.
It's cool. Like, that one little voice line makes it canon that
Right.
that the thing is coming back and that it's not just you doing repeatable content. I had a
Exactly.
similar moment, and this is something you haven't hit yet, but fractals.
Uh,
I think you know where I'm going. In fractals,
yeah.
which are like endgame dungeons, they're 5-man
Mhm.
content at endgame. You're basically bouncing through time and space in these things. In one, you're a char during a war, in another, you're in this underwater place just trying to survive, and on and on and on. And then the last fractal, up until very recently, the last fractal is called Shattered Observatory, and it looks like just time and space is falling apart around you. And you fight these creatures of like untold power, and then the final boss is basically an Asura who has broken everything. Like he broke time and space, and you're there fighting him, and he pulls out a very recognizable handheld cannon, and he's like, he says, he has a line, and like, I got tingles the first time I realized what he was saying. He says, "Do you remember this? This is from that pirate that you killed over and over and over and over again." And he basically, that line made it canon that you doing the fractals over and over and over was not just repeatable content. He was like, you know, you killed he was referring to the My Trin fractal, and he's like, yeah, I watched you do it over and over and over and over, and I took that guy's gun.
That's cool. And I just love Asura too. Like some of their ambient dialogue is so fantastic. I was in the same area and it was just this little lab that they'd had that was just placed in the middle of nowhere. And some of the ambient dialogue was so ridiculous. There was one of them that was like, the liquefaction, our liquefaction project isn't working properly. And the other Asura is like, well, is it, you know, making people dissolve and turn into like, you know, liquid? And the person's like, yeah, but they're not dying. Another person's like, well, we'll have to keep, you know, fixing that. You know, we'll have to keep working on it. And I'm over here going, wouldn't that hurt? Like, that is so terrible that they're just like, oh, yeah, we'll have to keep fixing that. All of the stuff that they're experimenting on. It's just like, but I thought it was really cool. And I just thought it was funny that anybody would say, or I think not only was it on a YouTube video, but it was also on the Reddit, which is what I kind of wanted. Have you guys, do you guys look at
think you're really
the
not
Reddit?
going to like when you get to the part of the story where you find out how the Sylvari and the Asura first met.
Probably not. I actually just...
If that line bothered you...
Yeah, I just started realizing like what the Nightmare Court actually, without even doing a lot of the story for the Nightmare Court, but like some stuff for the Nightmare Court, like keeping things as slaves and whatnot, and kind of like how they're working with people. But yeah, so like, what do you guys think about like, do you guys actually look at the Reddit quite a bit for Guild Wars 2, or any like anything outside
I don't,
of...
and he does.
I love the subreddit because the subreddit is a window into what a lot of people actually think about the game, in my opinion. I think you actually get like a lot of average viewpoints on the subreddit, and that's why I think it's really useful to kind of keep in touch with it. Because you know, to talk about the thing, like, you know, you're too positive about the game. The reason for that is, well, no, this is not the reason for this, but like one of the reasons is that you haven't played the game for very long, and Guild Wars 2, more so than other games, I would say, honestly feels like the perfect game for like the first 6 months, even a year. Honestly, like if you haven't played 2,000 hours in Guild Wars 2, none of the problems with the game will ever trouble you. You will never encounter anything wrong with the game. You have to play the game a bit to actually see where there are issues, because there are issues with the game, but you won't see them until much later on. And the game does a very good job of masking this. And the issue is that people go, oh, you're so positive, you're selling out for the game. Like, how can you say this? Well, the reason we'll say that is because they played the game a lot.
They're jaded veterans.
And they're very, very jaded. And, you know, to a certain extent, I would actually kind of say that people kind of play the game wrong to an extent. I mean, I think a lot of people try and play Guild Wars 2 as a completely solo experience, which, I don't know. Why'd you do that? That doesn't make any sense to me.
An MMO.
But, yeah,
I know.
yeah, like with the Reddit stuff. Yeah, I think the Reddit is really useful because you can kind of get a feel for the sentiment in the community, and you can see the discord in the community as well. That, you know, when people talk about PvP, they're downvoting each other and they're flaming each other. You know, like same with raids. Right? Like raids are always a hot topic. Like you know, there are so many things where the upvote percentages, right, is like very, you know, it's like 60%. Right? You know, it's a contentious, and you can kind of see, okay, what's actually contentious? What are people arguing? Where is there some like how to say it, like discomfort, right? Like where is there animosity in the player base? And I think the Reddit's a really good gauge of that because there's a lot of it. You know, like the Guild Wars 2 community is very well known for being very, very positive. But try being a content creator and posting a video there. If they don't like you, boom, it's gone.
But not
right?
even posting a video there, but just okay. So people have posted my videos there. It didn't have anything to do with me. I didn't know that they were there, and I got mostly positive things, but there was some animosity. But it's just kind of why I was bringing it up was just being a creator for anything, and just the difference between the way that people hold themselves in game and talk with you, like saying, you know, great community, by the way, and versus actually seeing things on like Reddit and YouTube comments, because there are a lot of salty people just being salty. So Muck, why don't you look at the Reddit, at the subreddit?
So okay, so back when I first started doing content creation, and I'm not going to, you know, just be like, oh, and it was freaking fantastic. It wasn't, you know, it's like when an artist looks back at their first pictures, they're like, oh my God, hide this. When I first started, you know, like many others, I was just trying to share my videos, and I put some of them on there. One of them was like, oh, hey, I made this to try to get new people into the game. What do you guys think? And it was like, why play Guild Wars 2? Explaining the appeal. And I put that video on there, and it got downvoted into oblivion. I got so much hate for it, and I was just like, oh my God, I worked really hard on this. They all hate it. This is awful. Put it on YouTube, and that video now sits over 300,000 views with a 99% like to dislike ratio. This is, I think, 3 separate times I tried posting something there and sharing something I made. They were all either guides or attempts to try to get more people to the game, and they got just absolutely ripped apart. And then on YouTube, again, they all end up with like 99% like to dislike ratio. And I'm not talking about like 99% like ratio from just my subscribers. Like, I'm talking out of views that vastly outnumber my subscribers. Like, I've come to the conclusion, and I'm not going to, like, you know, testify in court that this is correct. This is just my opinion. The people on Reddit are a very vocal and angry minority. You know, like Teapot said, it's a great place to find out why people are angry. Yeah, because they're all angry. Everyone there is pissed off. Like, that's what it feels like for me. And just because of my experience on other groups, I feel like if you go there to get their opinion of someone, of something that you've done, it does not represent the community as a whole. Now, grant, like, you know, and it's mostly knee-jerk reactions. Like, you know, like, okay, we've nerfed Firebrand's damage by 0.5%. Whole subreddit front page, Firebrand is dead! The entire page. The whole thing is that. Now, there are some funny memes. I enjoy the memes. Right. There are some funny stuff there. But I definitely feel like, you know, when I share something there, and then, you know, on the Facebook group, Guild Wars 2 has a very kind Facebook group. I love those people over there.
And you had actually
the YouTube stuff. I feel like when I look at like the numbers of people reacting to the content there, the ones on the subreddit, which will be like, you know, 1,000 votes, mostly down, or you know, some up, and then over here out of 300,000 people, and over here out of a few hundred people, it feels like those guys are the ones. And I'm pointing to Reddit with this gesture. It feels like those guys are the ones that are different from all the other platforms. And they're angry no matter what you do.
It's actually funny that that's your reasoning, because I'm not sure if you guys have kept up with my other videos, but I would have people ask me all the time, like, why I stopped playing 14. Why did you stop playing 14? I'm like, well, because I wanted to do this, this, and this, and I wasn't getting what I wanted out of the game. So it's not that I disliked the game or the devs or anything, but I wanted to get this, 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 and this, and it wasn't there. And I was like, but since I'm making a video about this, kind of the other thing is the community in different areas. Because, you know, the way that they flame people is really bad. So you see, like, people being toxic and, you know, obviously, like, in PvP or whatever for other games. But it was one of those things where the things that they said, and then on top of that, they would take it so far as to, like, flood your business email with, like, death threats. Like,
I admit I never experienced that, but I very much felt like, to use a metaphor here, I felt like I almost got chased off the subreddit with, like, people, a mob of with torches and pitchforks kind of thing. And I was just like, okay. And I've tried to peek back in there a couple times, and it's not, in my opinion, it's not a happy place. So I've just taken to avoiding it.
Yeah. So, and just with what you were saying is kind of like, you disliked something, so you removed yourself from the situation, correct? You felt like you got chased off, but you kind of like remove yourself from the situation, which is kind of how I felt about, I was already disinterested in a lot of things in 14. And so I removed myself from the situation with that. But then I was also talking about things that I disliked, some of the content that was made that I really disliked because it felt like, dumb stuff. And I won't go into it. But it was so funny because people were saying that because I said, I didn't like it, so I removed myself from the situation. They're like, well, you're just thin-skinned and letting them win. Is that really what happened?
I mean, I would reply with, I'm glad you're here enjoying my free content.
Yeah, right? Like.
I mean, yeah, I'm inclined to agree. But I also think, there is a certain level of pragmatism you can apply here. Like, if there's a lot of people frustrated about the game, and they're the ones who played the game the most, that's a problem, right? Because it makes your game look bad. If you're a new player to Guild Wars 2 and you go on the subreddit, like, what kind of impression are you going to get, Yeah. I mean, it depends on the day. It depends on the day you go there, right? Sometimes like, oh, this is the best game ever made, yeah, right? Okay, but sometimes it's just terrible. Arena is a horrible company. Fire them all, right? Get them out of here, right? I'm uninstalling, right? Yeah, and that's a problem. And I agree. Look, if people are being assholes, yeah, I mean, get the hell out of here, right? Like, they don't need to be part of the conversation. But I think, to an extent, you want to, this is something that is actually a problem, and it needs to be resolved. I'm being a little critical of the subreddit, but I actually, for what it's worth, I do appreciate the subreddit. All you Redditors out there, I appreciate you guys, and I want to understand why you're frustrated, and I want to try
and taking a chance to farm some subs real quick.
Yeah, sure. No. I mean, yeah, 100%, right? But the thing is, I don't want people to feel like I hate the Reddit or something, right? Or we, that I want them all to just shut up and stop talking. No, it's not how it is. Whenever I see a player who's frustrated about something in Guild Wars 2, I got a funny story actually. I was doing open world, I was doing map completion for a legendary, and there's this guy. In map chat, he's saying this is a terrible game. This is complete, bullshit, right? Because he was trying to do the a hero point in Heart of Thorns. You probably know this one, Mugget, is the the Balthazar one in Auric Basin. One of the more challenging ones, for sure.
Oh, yeah. I just know that area, already.
Yep. It kind of one-shots you a little bit, and he was very, very frustrated. He was like, this is terrible. It's impossible. I can't do it. And then, I went in and I did the hero point for him. I was like, oh, I'll help. No problem, right? And we did the hero point. And then, he was like, I said, well, the reason you died there is because you just didn't understand the mechanic, right? It's like, you need to, when the boss goes to 50%, you need to run away. Otherwise, he's going to kill you instantly. Not gonna lie, it's not the best designed mechanic in the universe, to be perfectly honest with you, but it is the mechanic, and you can play around it, and you can win. And then he was like, oh, okay, all right, fine. And then he was like, I continue doing my thing. And then I see him later complaining in map chat about, how am I possibly supposed to do this map collision? It's so secret, you can't find it. How is it possible to even get this stuff? I'm like, well, sorry, okay, fine, right. I showed him the other hero point, the last one he needed. And I was like, well, how am I supposed to find that? I was like, well, you just look around for things, and eventually you get there. And then, we played around a little bit. I was doing some map collision, just chatting with this guy, and he became a lot less frustrated. And he was really upset. He was having a really bad time in the game. And obviously you can't do this for every single player, right? But I think that if players are frustrated, there's a reason, and it might not necessarily be a good reason. For example, this player I encountered was just under a misapprehension, right? Like, he just didn't understand the game very well, right? And if you fix that, he's fine, right? And hopefully, we'll go on to enjoy the game. Right? And a lot of players, this is something I see a lot. There are a lot of players who are like, I can't do raids because you need a perfect comp and a perfectly optimized build. You don't need that. You can play whatever you want.
Just need some level 78s. It's fine.
Level 78. I mean, you can play whatever you want in raids, and you'll be okay, right? And the raids are very, very toxic, and there is some toxicity in raids. I mean, in any human interaction, there's a potential for toxicity, right? And that might happen. But, is that really a good representation? Not really, no. And a lot of players, I think, in Guild Wars 2, and certainly in outside the game too, this is another thing that I really look at, and I'm looking at recently as well, because you mentioned the whole like should you play Guild Wars 2 in 2021? I'm not a real Guild Wars 2 YouTuber yet, Mark, because I haven't made that video. Okay, every real Guild Wars 2 YouTuber has made that video, and I haven't yet.
I've only made every single feature in the game ever, but I'm not a real Guild Wars.
I'm catching up. I'm catching up with you guys. So don't worry. Like I'm in the tailwind, but I'm on my way. But like, from an outside perspective, Guild Wars 2 is like an actual meme, right? And I know that will sound very bizarre to maybe some people watching this, right?
If you ask someone who's been in games, like, hey, what do you Guild Wars 2 is getting a new expansion, I think the average gamer would be like, is that game still on?
Yeah, is it running? Is that alive? Yeah. And that's a problem. Right, and you were talking about Asmongold earlier, Xandrii, and yeah, I really like Asmongold as well. I like him a lot. He's a very funny guy, very entertaining, a very smart guy. But then I see him talk about like, Guild Wars, so I'm like, because he just roasts the game super hard and with information that's not really that accurate. And
to be fair,
it's kind of like
not WoW.
Yeah, but again, that's also kind of a problem, right? Like you don't really want that sort of thing, because one of the issues, to kind of segue away from a specific individual and more to like a thing, in my opinion, there is so much misinformation in Guild Wars 2, and it's propagated by its own community as well, right? Players will say, oh, this is bad, this is good, right? The PvP meta is this, the PvP meta is that, and they're just wrong. Like they don't know what they're talking about, right? They've got no idea how the game is, and that happens inside the game and outside the game. And in my opinion, this is one of the biggest things that we as content creators have to tackle, because there is so much misinformation in the game, about almost everything, right? It's so hard to get a good answer because everyone disagrees and very few people are actually right.
No,
and that's the whole thing with Reddit, right? I think that the Reddit expresses this. I think the forums express this a lot. I think a lot of community discords express this a lot. And in my opinion, it's one of the biggest things that prevents players from accessing the game effectively, because they kind of get lost in finding out what's actually true, what's actually accurate. And I think it makes the game look weird, and it just isn't a good look from an outside perspective there as well. It's a really big issue in Guild Wars 2, I think, is misinformation.
No, it's actually funny that you mentioned that, because a lot of the people that spread misinformation just in games in general, and I've seen it be actually very prevalent in 14 and Guild Wars 2 is, well, it's this, and I have the statistics to back it up. And then other people are like, where is your source material? And so like all of a sudden chat becomes like all of these links that are literally to like these random like websites or these random guides that aren't necessarily like, yeah, it might be a take on something, but it's not like the end all be all. So I just think it's funny that you mentioned it too, and that your example of a single player disliking the game, or at least saying things about the game in map chat, was literally because it's nice that you help the person out, but it's not the game's fault that you can't do it. Like, maybe it didn't present it well, but do you see what I mean, though? A lot of people take that, that road where they're just like, the game's bad because I was not able to do this. And it's like, okay, well, did you ask for help? Or, did you know what I mean, though? Like, just because you couldn't do it, because you can't play a class doesn't mean the class is bad. Because you can't play a build doesn't mean the build is dead. It just means that you can't play it.
Welcome to Necromancer. So one of the things I get often is people say, oh, when will finally Necromancer is good? Like, I can't wait until they buff Necromancer. I love this quote. Okay, there was a quote from the subreddit actually, and it was a post about Necromancer, and it was a new player, and God, broke my heart. There was a new player saying, I love the Necromancer. Is it good to raids? Right, and the response from the subreddit was, Necromancer is not even fringe viable. I just love that quote. It's stuck with me, and it always will. I absolutely love it. And and the thing is with this is that at the time, so Path of the Fire released an elite specialization for Necromancer called Scourge, and Scourge is probably the most broken build the game has ever seen, actually, for raids. It is so overpowered, right, that even when it was you have these benchmarks, right, DPS rotations, right, it had a DPS on the golem of 29,000, and a lot of other classes could do like 35, 36, even 40,000 damage. And Necromancer was so strong that even at 29,000 DPS, I probably considered it overpowered at 29,000.
Here, hold on. So,
DPS.
real quick,
right?
because Xandrii's not in the end game yet. So Xandrii, he's a professional necro. I'm a novice necro. I did Bone Skinner the other day on my Necromancer. There's a support necro build that excels in reviving people. I took people that didn't know the fight, and it's a 10-man boss. It's kind of like a caffeine-free diet raid boss. And they didn't know the fight. They're doing everything wrong. We killed it, and I ended with 107 reses.
I was just about to ask that because
no other class can do that crap.
Yeah, no, it's actually funny because I did, like, obviously I haven't made it there yet, but I do know of it just because of the previous podcast that Teapot and I did together where he was like, I had this many reses and this is what I love to play in raids because people have said it's not viable. And
it is the ultimate training
we got
wheels.
through it because I did. Yeah, absolutely.
Heal Scourge is not just the best, most overpowered build in the game for raids. It is by far the most overpowered build in the game. I would liken it to a DPS build doing 100,000 DPS, like maybe even more than that, right? Like it is broken to a level that defies comprehension, right? In this game, it is insane. And the thing about Necro is the perfect example of this, by the way, about misinformation, because Necromancer has actually been, it's always been good, even in the core game in PvP. It was a bit lame in PvE. Until, a little bit later on. But the thing is that Necromancer has always been meta in World versus World, always been playable or meta in PvP, right? And since Heart of Thorns has been incredibly strong in PvE as well, right? And I will regularly see comments saying that Necromancer is bad and has always been bad, right? And this is one of the best examples of prolonged, sustained misinformation. And there are a lot more examples too, right? But Necromancer is the best example because like a lot of people think it's bad and it always has been bad, but this is objectively false for every game mode, right? Okay, like, that you can't, this is not like a debate, right? People will come and say, oh, but Teapot, Necromancer isn't good. Like, oh, no, this is not something we're arguing about. Like, this is fact, right? Like, Necromancer has been played at high level, right? In PvP and World versus World pretty much forever. I mean, especially in World versus World, like Necromancer has basically been one of the real big backbones of World versus World because it has boon corruption capabilities, something that nothing else has yet. Okay, wait till they give it to Firebrand, Mark. Have fun with that. Oh yeah,
it'll be a side effect for when they give alacrity to their group. They'll also corrupt nearby boons.
Also corrupt boons. Nice, I like it. Give alacrity for each boon corrupted. Nice. But yeah, no, it's a really, really difficult thing, and I think trying to fix this sort of thing is incredibly difficult. It's going to take a lot of unraveling to break through all of this stuff, And to kind of bring it back, it was a bit of a tangent there, a bit of a ramble there, because it's something I feel very passionately about. But when a player says, "Oh man, I wish my Necromancer was good," right? This player is having a negative experience. They're like, "Man, I want to play Necro, but I feel like I can't because it's bad," right? So this player is having a bad experience in the video game because of bad information, right? The only reason they're having a bad experience is because they think they're having a bad experience, but they actually aren't. It's just a misapprehension. And I think this is what happens in a lot of content, right, in the game. Like, I think players think a build is bad. I always say, I really wish I could play Heal Ellie in raids, but man, Heal Ellie's bad, right? No, it's not.
No, it's not. I haven't even got there, and I know it's not.
Yeah, it's really good, right? It's a really strong build, and I think this goes round and round and round. Like, you have all this stuff there, and it's not just about that. It's players don't know how to farm gold very well. They don't know how to start doing this. They don't know how to get this reward. They don't know how to approach this area of the game. They find frustration here, and because of finding that frustration, they don't enjoy the game. And something that I'm very, very keen on is looking at ways that I can address that frustration. And this is where the Reddit kind of comes back into this, right? It's because a lot of these players, they're expressing that they're unhappy with something, right? And I think what we should be doing is saying, right, why? Why is that? How do we fix it? Right? Because if we don't, these are the players that are gonna talk, right? Because I mean, You know, I watch a lot of Muck stream as well. Actually, I am everywhere. I am
He's a fan of
everywhere.
Muck.
Watching this stuff. You know, but no, just for the record, I watch everyone's stream. I try to. I'm
And
always
that's what I
lurking
mentioned
around.
at the beginning.
Okay.
Like that's how I feel about Guild Wars 2. I watch
yeah.
everybody as well.
And like the difference between his community and my community is staggering. Okay, it's very, very different. Like a lot of players in Muck's community are very happy with the game, right? And a lot of players in my community are like, "Oh, this game is terrible. Why are you still playing this dead game? Omega, right?"
Viewbot.
And that's the thing. Like, why? What's going on there? Like, why is that the case? And I've actually tried to change this. I actually have taken again, this all the way. We're bringing it full circle here. As I started taking the game a bit more seriously,
it's because of what you said about Scrapper. You set him all off.
I set him off. Yeah,
You're like a Reddit gatekeeper now. You're like, no scrappers, no fun allowed.
Get him out of here. No, I mean, it's No, hey, go play some World vs. World. Scrapper is OP there. Nice, very good. Yeah, no, I think that I police my community a lot more aggressively. I like actively try and fix this a little bit more now because I think it's very, very important. And to an extent, I think that I'll actually own this, right? I think that for a long time I didn't really bother to police my community in this regard, and to a certain extent I even encouraged it, right? I admit that. I was like memeing about the game, like, it's a dead game, Omega, right? Like, yeah, sure. Like, to a sense I contributed to that. I think that was very damaging. That was stupid. I shouldn't have done that. It was a big mistake, and it was damaging. Like, that sort of thing is very damaging to the game, I think. Particularly seeing as, the public opinion of Guild Wars 2 is already very poor. And that this is like one of the really big challenges that we have to overcome and actually find out how to work with these players, because again, you're much more likely to express a negative opinion than a positive one, right? As you say, right, Mug, you're like the videos on like should you play the game or like what's good about Guild Wars 2, they are universally popular, and they almost always are received with universal acclaim. Right, everyone loves this stuff. Right, I was like, "Oh wow, this game is great! I can't wait to play a game." But the trouble is that those players will just play the game and get on with it, right? Okay, they aren't the ones who are like, I'm gonna sweat this game 24 hours a day. I'm playing every single day, day and night, all day, all night.
I mean, is that a problem if they just chill and enjoy it?
Well, to an extent, yes, because if those players. Well,
we're getting to the deep cuts.
I don't mind people chilling, but the thing is that I think we need to encourage the players who feel good about the game and enjoy the game and perhaps have a less salty take on the game to actually express that a bit more.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, what are you going to see? Right? Like if I go on, if you go to all these subreddit places, right, and if you go on Twitch and you see a bunch of salty dogs, what does that look like? Right, that doesn't look good, right? Particularly if you're a more engaged gamer. Like the thing is that like every MMO is built off its casual player base, but the narrative is shaped by the veterans. This will always be the case. Yeah. Like the narrative surrounding a game is going to be shaped by the people who talk and engage in Twitch and actually engage hardcore in YouTube and on the forums, on the Reddit and stuff like that. Like that's where the actual dialogue surrounding the game is born. And I think particularly for Guild Wars 2, which is a game that's kind of on the upswing right now, I think it can't really afford to have. I don't think you can really afford to have that be negative, right? So is it a problem that people chill? No, of course not. And I would encourage people, look, if people get really stressed out by the subreddit and doing this stuff, do not engage. Yeah, like just play your game and enjoy it. But I think one of our really big missions, or one of my missions anyway, is absolutely going to be to try and get players a little bit more engaged in the game who are enjoying it. And I want to have that expressed a lot more. Because I think that it is underexpressed right now, massively underexpressed. And I think it's very easy to get a bad impression of Guild Wars 2, and it's very easy to get bad information about Guild Wars 2, which can lead you to dislike the game. And I think we lose a surprising amount of players in that way, right? Particularly, I think we lose a lot of stickiness, right? So I think players will play the game, but then they won't stick because they won't quite get it, or they'll get lost, or they'll have a bad experience or something like that. And that's what I think Guild Wars 2 actually struggles with, to a certain extent anyway.
I've actually kept you guys for almost 2 hours, which was not my intent. This was fun. And I've never done this before for a YouTube video, but we had so many awesome terms mentioned. So if people have watched this far, in the comments, and also, are you guys both recording this as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I'm not. No, I'm not.
With your permission that was given to me beforehand.
Oh yeah. I know. I was just wondering. So for my video specifically, if you guys watch this far in the video, thank you. And if you want to comment, just so I know that you watched this far, with salty dogs. I think that's a thing that people do, right? If you've watched this far, here's something to put in chat. I've never done that, so we've had so many amazing amazing terms. But I think we'll probably leave everyone with, is there something that, other than what was already mentioned, that Muck you think might be like, a hot take or something that you've come across in game and or like on Twitch or YouTube or anything that you kind of wanted to discuss a little bit further?
I don't know if it's a hot take or not, but one thing that is on my mind right now, or talked about earlier, is talking about like, the Reddit community going like, oh, necros are terrible, or oh, this build's bad, stuff like that. Something that I say a lot on my stream is because you get people that come in there and they're like, hey, is insert anything here good or bad? That happens a lot. Or like, oh, hey, is a heal Ellie or is heal Scrapper viable in raids? Usually I'll be like, look, for the top 0.1% of the player base, this healer might be better than that healer. This DPS might do 5% more damage than that DPS. But for everyone below that top 0.1%, it's going to be based on your skill level. That class is fine. Just know what you bring to the table. If you like playing Thief, you're just a DPS. But you know what? Every group needs like 5 of those. So if you could play it well, that's fine. Just know what you're getting into. You don't make a Thief if you think you're going to be a Bard, because they don't have that. Maybe an End of Dragons. We'll see. But as long as you know what you're getting into, you don't have to compare yourself to those top 0.1% of the players. You can, more than almost any other MMO, you can play it your way as long as you can do your way well. And then usually I'll show some visual examples. Like this week, I've been really getting into that new heal Scrapper thing, and I tried it out in raids. I went into raids with people that were not veteran raiders, and I tanked the raid and was one of the 2 healers in the raid group and provided the boons I was supposed to provide, and we cleared like 4 raids. I was like, this is absolutely viable. Now, for the top tier group doing challenge modes and trying to get it done in 29 seconds or less, or God help them, they're terrible, maybe they're not going to want to do this, but for everybody else, there's MasterCard.
I agree.
I don't know. I felt like I had to say that at the end of that.
No, you're fine. I've actually always kind of felt that way too, and I feel a lot of it is like how well you know your class. So it's not necessarily if something is viable. It's, can you play it that way?
Right.
And it's hard to explain to you. I mean, obviously, I'm not a new player anymore for Guild Wars 2 by any means, but when people who are new come in and ask you, for advice for things like this, but I also feel like it's almost unfortunate that people even ask that. And I think it's because there are a lot of things in, like WoW, or actually WoW specifically, where things don't get balanced, or classes or specs don't get balanced for a very long time. So yes, you can probably play it and it's viable.
Just as an insert here, I played WoW for near 10 years, and I actually did like server first. I was raiding like 30 hours a week raiding, and I've got a couple server first under my belt. I can't do that crap anymore, but I've done it in the past. I actually remember a time period in WoW where they over-nerfed shamans. We could not kill bosses with our shaman healers. And, it was heartbreaking, but we were like, we can't take you guys right now. We can't do it. We can't do it. We have to, they're like, dude, we're not, one guy specifically was just like, I'm not leveling another healer. That would take like 100 hours. This is before you could do this disgusting pay to max level thing. He's like, I'm not leveling another character. I'm going to quit the game if I can't play this anymore. And we're like, what choice do we have? We literally can't kill any content with these healers until the next patch hits, which was probably like a month or 2 later. And like I've seen that. So I totally get when people come in and they ask, like, is this viable? Is this good? Is this bad? Because probably their past experiences.
Right. And that's really unfortunate. And that's, as much as I like to like, or especially talking with you guys, because my opinion of a lot of things has been so positive, and there's a lot of things that I have picked out that are positive, and maybe it's because I haven't played yet for a year, have the 2,000 hours, but that is something that I actually think is a really, really, really major positive for Guild Wars 2, especially because, and like you were talking about, there was this point in Legion where they nerfed warriors into the ground. And so you could not have a warrior tank. Just specific numbers were so bad that even with people throwing, all of their DRs and all of their externals onto this tank, you could not survive certain hits. And it's just, so it's really unfortunate that people have to ask that, but I also think it's really cool that as long as you, in Guild Wars 2, or at least from what I've seen and from, what other people have said, is that if you really focus on a build and you're actually, decent at it, that you can do all of this content like we were talking about. So
an issue there though, because this is true, but that I hate to rain on the parade because I think this is worth saying. Actually, it's worth saying. Like a big part of that is because the content is incredibly undertuned for people who actually are good at the game. I
can accept that.
You can do a lot of people consider the hardest boss in the game to be an encounter called Doom CM, Doom Challenge Mode.
I know about that too.
You can do that with 6 people.
Yeah.
As opposed to the 10 you're required. That should not be the case, right? Obviously. That's like saying, hey, we're going to go do Mythic WoW, but we're going to do it with 15. Yeah, or actually, wait, more like 12 even, right? No, you aren't. You aren't doing that. It's not going to happen. Just no way. And this is kind of like the thing about Guild Wars 2 is that like the game is very undertuned. You want to go another hour? Here's the thing about Guild Wars 2, right? Is that the game is actually very hard to play. Like the skill floor is quite high, but then the actual difficulty ceiling is very, very low, right? These bosses can just get utterly destroyed by this stuff, and you'd actually see a lot more issues like this if the content was tuned harder, right? If the content was tuned harder, then you would absolutely see certain classes actually not be good because there is a huge power disparity, right? I am definitely a big balance advocate, and I want the game to be well balanced. And funnily enough, I actually think Guild Wars 2 does a surprisingly okay. But again, let's talk about kind of like the heel scrapper thing here, right? The heel scrapper is a great example of this because this is a build that I think should be good. I really think it should be a good build. And it is for the current content. But if there was actually hard content, Heel Scrapper would probably not be that good. You wouldn't really want to play
if you had to save those utilities like the Bulwark and stuff or key moments, then you'd be in trouble. You couldn't keep quickness up without that.
Yeah. And that's kind of the issue here with the game. And look, I know we all love Firebrand here, but if the content was harder, you'd just see people hard. I mean, look at Fractals, right? I've done a bit of market research on this, and Fractals, 5-man content, dungeons, right? The recent challenge mode Fractal that got released is called Sunquar Peak, and it's actually quite challenging. And I have some insight into this a little bit because I've done some market research, and this is actually, people consider it to be harder than raids. This is one of the pieces of content that people struggle with the most in the game. And what do you see there? Well, you see people stacking broken classes. You see people stacking Heal Firebrand, DPS Firebrand, Scourge. Are you going to see Thief there? Not really. Are you going to see Ellie there? Maybe sometimes, right? But not very often. You're going to, and this would happen in raids. If raids were tuned more aggressively, and they had harder mechanics, right, that punish you more, and stricter DPS checks, then you would start seeing a lot more class, not optimized, but carry classes being used there. In raids, you can get away with playing stuff that is maybe not super amazing and not playing very well because the content's tuned very, very low. But if you have some really, really hard content, then you would definitely see people do this. It's exactly what happens in Fractals. In Fractals, people they love their Firebrands, and now they're gonna love Necro as well. Because now Necro is giga overpowered now in Fractals. You know what? Hey, every dog has his day, and now it's Necro's time to shine. Necro's time to be the most overpowered build in the entire game ever. Very nice. But that's the thing there. Hey, all I'm saying is, where's my point there? My point is, ArenaNet, give us difficulty settings. Give me ultra challenge mode. Give me challenge mode. Give me CM. Let's roll. Nice.
CM plus 99.
Yeah, and balance the game as well. Make everything
If a
good.
single
Make your
player
scrappy
dies
good.
before the 10-minute mark,
Yeah.
he wants a wipe called. It's
Well,
impossible at that point.
I mean, well, kind of, yeah. I mean, I ran a tournament, Elitist Raiding Party 3. So for those that know, it was a raid tournament. It was a while ago, and we had a custom rule set, and the custom rule set was no downstate. And so, as soon as if you went downstate, you had to type /GG and kill your character, so you cannot be revived. And I knew this was going to be hard, but these are some of the best guilds in the game. Snow Crows were in play here, right? Lucky Noobs, great teams. There was a boss.
Name.
Yeah. Some bosses won, right? So we had like a hard cap on how long a match could go, 40 minutes. After 40 minutes, at that point, we just say, all right, whoever got furthest wins. And I didn't expect to have to actually use that, but we did. These top guilds couldn't do it. They couldn't clear the wing in 40 minutes, some of them. Not every boss did die, but there were a few times where it didn't go super well, right? They didn't work out, right? And yeah, the bosses won, right? Because it turns out that having downstate is very, very overpowered. Hello, Eel Scourge, right? It turns out that being able to have this like certain level of forgiving gameplay in raids makes them so much easier and so much more recoverable, so much more manageable. To the point where if you just take away downstate, and all the content in Guild Wars 2 becomes like 50 times harder, right? It's like so much harder. It's way harder if you have no downstate in raids all of a sudden. So yeah, like there are ways you can do this, and there are ways it wouldn't even require that much tweaking, right? Like if you just do a few little tweaks, make a few more mechanics more punishing, this game could be brutal because it's like it's a very Twitch game. There's a lot of like reaction involved and good positioning. It's a very punishing game. Like if you take away the safety net. So yeah, like it's kind of interesting, like how you can really push players, and I'd really like to see that happen actually, like with stricter DPS checks. Yeah, if you lose a player, you should probably that should be really bad. Like if you lose a player right now, if I'm like doing a raid, even a hard raid like Doom challenge mode, right, and a DPS, I'm like he's a DPS, who cares? He's irrelevant, right? Doesn't matter, right? As long as our supports are alive. Easy. Like, that's wrong. That shouldn't be the case in a raid. Like, I should value a DPS player very highly. Right now, guys, when I see a DPS, I'm like, I'm going to throw him a banana, right? Oh, hello there. Hello, little buddy, right? You're pressing your buttons. Oh, hello. Right? That's how I look at DPS players, okay? Right, in Guild Wars 2. But that's wrong. That shouldn't be the case. DPS should be a skilled role in Guild Wars 2, but it's actually considered to be probably the least skilled role in Guild Wars 2, because it just doesn't really matter that much. It's not relevant. Like the relevant roles are basically the supports and the tank. And if you have those good, you can probably clear it. I mean, again, I was doing some training on, the challenge mode, fractal challenge mode the other day, yesterday actually. And yeah, we cleared it with people who were probably doing less than 25%, less than 20% actually of the damage they should be doing, right? Should that be possible? No, absolutely not. Of course not. Like, that's ridiculous, right? And I was playing, a bit of the old heal firebrand, it's good. It's a good build. And we managed to get through it, but it's kind of silly that that's possible, right? Like that being possible, is that a bad thing? I don't know. Maybe yes, no. I don't really mind because I had fun.
The only way to fix that like that would be if they had a version of the fight that had really strict enrage timers.
Yeah,
because
I agree.
Shorter enrage means higher DPS is required.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I really like DPS timers for this reason. By the way, like it's a bit of it's a bit of a gimmick, right? Not the most immersive feature. Oh, time's up.
Yeah,
boss
but if they don't have it,
right?
World First would always be a tank and 9 healers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well,
I actually like the way they implemented it in 14 as well, because it's literally, I mean, it's a bar, like, no matter what you're doing, and then it's like, it's an end-all be-all, but the way that it actually, which I didn't know, the way it actually works is, it hits people in an AoE that starts near the boss and then goes out. And so you can get a couple of extra shots in at the end of, of this enrage meter, even though it's doing this, massive attack. It's going to take, one more millisecond to get to, you're ranged, and so you might actually be able to down it. But it's funny that you mentioned that and things being so easy, because I remember one of the qualms of people when I had swapped to Guild Wars 2, or when making that my Twitch content, and people were like, "There's too many one-shot mechanics." So it's just funny that you mentioned the idea of being able to res people or downstate, and it's and the other thing that my fiance and I were talking about too is it's sure, but did you dodge? Because the reason that there are mechanics like that is because of like the kit that you're given and the type of combat that the game has. So it's just it's
wrinkly
funny.
brain, giant brain. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So the thing about Guild Wars 2 is that it gives the player an unprecedented amount of autonomy compared to other MMOs. Right? Other MMOs, if there's a fireball coming at you, it's going to hit you, like one way or another, and you just heal it, or you can like absorb it with a shield or something, right? It's going to hit you. Guild Wars 2, if a boss is slamming you, you can just like dodge, right? Just dodge. And this is like, this is in a way a problem. Like the game being well designed is a big problem because it means that you can be very, very bad at Guild Wars 2, but also very, very good at the game. And, you know, the other thing with the DPS checks, I think it's really worth mentioning this, is that because there's no DPS checks in Guild Wars 2, or no, like, strict DPS checks, it means you don't get punished for playing loads of support, right? You know, again, if you look at, like, raid progression, say, Final Fantasy or WoW, right, you betcha they'd love to run 4 healers. Like, oh, man, I love it. Let's run 4 healers. The thing is, there's no way they can ever get away with that, because if they run 4 healers, 5 healers, boss is going to enrage. You're just dead, right? You're just going to run out of time. In Guild Wars 2, I can go, you know what? We're having a bit of trouble. I'm going to bust out the 3rd healer, right? And that's not an issue because you're never going to enrage the boss. It's just not going to happen. And even if you do, you can probably survive it. You know, Cairn is the first boss of the 4th raid wing, Bastion of the Penitent. I think this is quite a famous mechanic, actually. Like, his enrage timer literally does nothing. Like, he doesn't even do more damage. It just does nothing. That's not quite true. You basically can't get rid of a debuff anymore, but the debuff won't kill you, so it's not really a big deal. But yeah, like there's a lot of like stuff like this in the game where you don't really get punished for playing defensively. And this is actually, again, this is something that, you know, like we talked about with Heal Scourge earlier. This is compounded by the fact that support builds are by far stronger than DPS builds. So the actual really overpowered stuff in Guild Wars 2 is support. It isn't damage, right? Stuff like, Firebrand, Scourge, Heal Elementalist, Druid, right? Like these are the builds, and Chronomancer, right? Like these are the builds that are actually insanely strong in the game. And as a result of that, you don't get punished for stacking the really, really overpowered stuff in Guild Wars 2. You can basically have all of it, and you will not. You'll lose some DPS, but it's not relevant really because this is something that Mark was mentioning earlier, right? Like
guaranteed kill.
It's a safer guaranteed kill, and it won't even be that much slower either. Because you might not have people going downstate, you might not lose a player, so then you've got that player alive the entire time. Like maybe and even if you do lose a bit of damage, you lose like 30 seconds, right? It's fine, right? You're not going to lose that much time by doing it, particularly in a pug group, because in pug group, okay, I see a player. It's absolutely it's the mystery bag, okay? Like, what's it going to be? Is this guy going to be a benchmark hero, or is he going to be, a little peepo, right? Just doing his best, right? Trying to do his thing, getting that DPS benchmark out there, right? Getting that rotation, and like this, this means that people are very fixated on the wrong things, in raids and in Guild Wars 2. It's like, I've got to play the big dick DPS build, but really, you don't want to play that, right? Because that build is going to make you feed, you're going to die, you're going to be dead, 3 DPS. And you're going to go, wow, this game's stupid, right? Like, the boss killed me. Well, it's because you were playing a completely glass cannon build and you're not very good at it. Like, so
I get that question so many times. Like, Buck, I keep dying in Heart of Thorns. What's wrong with this place? What gear are you running? Berserkers, why? All right, well, if you're not really good at dodging, I found the problem.
It's that feeling when I literally said 20 minutes ago, guys, we should start wrapping this up, and then went on for another
12-hour podcast.
I know, sorry about that. But I'm hungry and I have to pee. So as much fun as this has been, if you guys could let everyone know where they can find you again, and we will actually legitimately wrap up this banter.
Incredible.
Sorry.
Just nonchalantly tells us she's going to go eat in the bathroom.
Yeah. With that's what we're worth, okay? We're worth less than that.
Sorry.
Yeah.
What? Watch when she interviews the voice of Timey. It's gonna be like a 5-hour podcast.
5 hours going on forever. No, hear the stomach growls there in the microphone. Like, oh wow. Okay, yeah, we see how it is.
I feel bad because whenever I pitch the idea of doing a podcast, I'm like, I'd at least like it to be 20 minutes, but like I'll try not to keep you for more than an hour and a half. And I'm sitting here going, it's been almost 2 hours. I have no idea what you guys have planned for the day, and I've had to pee for the last 20 minutes.
Yeah, well, okay. Follow me. Chat,
Follow me.
viewers, commenters, right? Leave some good comments, right? I want to see. So honestly, you know what? No, I want you guys to leave really mean comments, then so I can debate you, right? Like, you know, roast me hard comments, and then I'll get in there and debate you all. There you go. That's what's gonna happen.
I got in trouble for saying that once. People
Oh.
were like,
Oh, no.
People were like, I can't believe, or I had a pinned comment on like I was talking about that issue with 14, and I was literally like, oh, and by the way, if you're literally just here to flame me, thanks for all of the views, algorithm, and ad revenue. And people were like,
Ooh.
I was going to subscribe to you until I saw that, and that's just as toxic as the people that are sending people death threats in email, in their business email. And I'm like, oh, honey, if that's
Disagree.
how you feel, then bye-bye.
Well, my work here is done. I have sabotaged your channel. Enjoy. Now there you go. But yes,
I appreciate it.
MightyTeapot, that's me on all socials. Get over there. I stream a lot. I am the true guild warrior, right? I will battle the naysayers of Guild Wars 2, right? That's what's going to happen, right? I will crush the enemies of Guild Wars 2 beneath my boot heels. And yes, finally, Guild Wars 2 will have its year in 2021 with End of Dragons. Definitely not end of development. There you go.
I feel like
all I've
after the
got.
2021, there was an asterisk I heard in your voice. That number can be updated at any time.
Hey, there's always next year, man. There's always next year.
That's an excellent attitude to have.
Yeah.
There's always next year if they even talk about more content next year. Just kidding. Sorry.
They don't even need to. They've got Teapot in the community.
Yeah, true.
He'll handle it.
True.
He's the unpaid intern that they are blessed with.
Oh man, like you don't have to make it so obvious. Oh, you know, I get paid 100 bits a month on Twitch by Ben. Okay, it's all good.
Oh,
A very good wage.
Ben does come around. Sometimes even subs. Big money.
Yeah.
I am Mukluk on Twitch, Mukluk YouTube on YouTube. And yeah, just let me quote Teapot here. Subscribe, follow, throw your credit card at the screen, all the good stuff. We love it. Big energy!
Big energy.
Xandrii, would you
you,
like to
guys.
tell the people watching the show
lost
who
the
you are and where you
lost
look
the
out?
word. Just
I'm
cannot follow
speechless.
up.
I'm
Like, yeah.
speechless. How do I follow that charisma? How do I follow, you know, that
You won't be
those
able to, but do
speeches?
your best.
Oh,
Nice.
I'm Zan. I'm not so new anymore. You can find me on Twitch at Xandrii, 2 I's, not Xandril, how a lot of people say. On YouTube, it's Xanblast Productions. It's Sam, Joe, Paul. So
Yeah, and on
Twitter,
Discord it's Zan
Xandrii.
Toast because she
I
likes to
know.
be difficult.
Discord is Zan Toast, and I totally forgot that it was Zan Toast. Instagram is Xandrii. No, not Texandrii. No, I'm not from Texas. Do I even sound like I'm from Texas? Absolutely not. But yeah, no. Follow, subscribe, comment things, and yeah, give us your worst. I mean, obviously this was supposed to be hot takes, so right?